A quiet reflection on knowledge as power begins over what looks like a routine camping trip in the woods, explaining that information can become a weapon sharp enough to bring down any opponent or turn against the person wielding it, as a dark-haired camper splits logs nearby. For all his supposed experience, the first log he tosses aside is laughably useless as firewood, making him wonder whether his father secretly bought their wood, though he still enjoys the peace. Especially because the forest offers some distance from Hannah's awkwardly close-knit group of friends, most notably Tyler, her possessive friend, who complains loudly while everyone sets up camp, while David and Izzy unload the gear and remind him that this getaway is meant to be relaxing. Tyler continues grumbling that arriving late ruined the trip and rejects assistance before anyone even offers. But Hannah remains certain everything will be fine because her boyfriend Zach knows what he is doing, and Zach agrees to lend a hand without letting Tyler's tantrum escalate any further, proving Hannah right by relying on years of family camping as he finishes chopping the wood. Tyler takes advantage of Zach's patience, demands another load, and sarcastically calls him Hatchetman, then casually hurls the axe his way as if basic safety rules do not exist out here, turning a simple chore into a wordless contest neither of them intends to back away from, only for Zach to snatch the weapon out of the air and respond with a dangerously narrow smile. Tyler glares after him in bitter silence, furious that his attempt at intimidation failed completely, while one of the others calls Hannah's boyfriend intense, and she readily admits that he is. Already on the move, Zach races farther into the forest along an overgrown path to gather timber, leaping down a slope as the innocent errand carries him farther away from the campsite. Once he has gathered enough wood for the evening, he finally turns to make his way back, but a surge of violet energy erupts around his feet before he can retrace his steps, locking his body in place while alien power rises and consumes the familiar woods, until the clearing disappears into a cosmic emptiness crowded with lights and swirling gateways. Zack stares into the impossible void and demands to know what the hell just happened, when a blue interface announces the activation of a system and welcomes him to the multiverse, a greeting that does absolutely nothing to explain where he has suddenly been taken. Earth scan identifies low F-grade mass and unranked energy, then begins making adjustments as he questions his sanity, declaring the planet too small and energy poor before announcing that other drafted worlds will be forcibly combined with it, with geography rearranged, arrival points randomized, and local creatures enhanced ahead of the multiverse connection. The sheer insanity makes him suspect Izzy's brownies, yet his calls for Hannah and David receive no reply, leaving him alone in boundless darkness where every shout vanishes without an echo, until the system initiates an incursion and attempts to summon a herald, only to discover the creature is materializing in his exact position and trigger a survival roll. Still unable to process the words, Zack repeats them as if that might somehow make the rules sensible, but his question ends when an unbearable presence suddenly takes shape behind him in the void, revealing a gigantic crimson herald whose mere arrival exposes the hopeless difference in strength. He gets only a heartbeat to stare before the towering monster locks onto him as its enemy, roaring from close range and destroying any hope that this might be a harmless hallucination, as the system names Urkaz and Zachary Atwood, then assigns them absurdly mismatched dice pools. Zack can roll anywhere from 1 to 100, while the herald's range extends to 100,000. And whichever participant receives the lower number will be erased, transforming terrible odds into a death sentence. Instead of complying, he demands that the interface explain itself, and declares that he will not roll when the difference is so completely unreasonable, but the spoken keyword counts as an instruction, and the system registers Zachary Atwood's accidental command. The numbers start spinning before he recognizes the trap, binding his life to a digital game of chance. While every frantic attempt to cancel the roll is ignored by the glowing screen, which continues cycling through results as he insists that none of this is funny anymore. The display eventually settles on 96, an extraordinarily fortunate result out of 100, and Zack acknowledges that no one could reasonably hope for much better, but then Urkaz's roll begins, setting 6 digits in motion across a vastly greater range. And with the herald looming overhead, even 96 suddenly seems pitiful, while the second roulette races through an overwhelming number of fatal possibilities. Confronted by death, Zack realizes he never had the chance to say goodbye to his father, or to Mackenzie, the younger sibling he believes deserved a much better brother than him, while everyone at the campsite remains completely unaware that he disappeared beyond the trees. With the monster poised to erase him, despair insists that his entire life will end here, decided by a cosmic slot machine before he was even allowed to understand the game, until anger finally overpowers fear and his fingers close firmly around the hatchet, because odds no longer matter if he still has the ability to fight what stands before him. He faces the impossible creature and asks fate to grant him a single chance. And against every expectation, the 6-digit display stops at 91, 5 below Zack's score. The system congratulates him while he struggles to accept what the numbers are showing, because Urkaz has genuinely lost and the Raging Herald is not permitted another roll. Brilliant white fractures spread across the monster before it can launch an attack, as streams of red energy coil around Zachary and hold him in place through its violent destruction. until the herald disintegrates into flowing particles and disappears from the system's realm. The protocol verifies his survival, records the herald's defeat, and returns to standard operation, sending him back into reality as one level-up notification after another fills his vision, before he lands in a strange forest clearing, alive but utterly confused. He remains face down for several moments, using the feel of grass to confirm the place is real. Then forces himself upright and wonders whether the cosmic nightmare truly occurred. After checking for wounds, he remembers the camp and immediately tries to hurry back, only to spot a crimson pillar in the distance above terrain that bears little resemblance to Earth. Towering trees and purple vegetation leave him unsure where the system has deposited him, until its warning about merging worlds offers the only explanation for the alien landscape. Still clinging to the possibility of a dream, Zack retrieves the hatchet and presses forward, although even guessing the direction of camp feels dangerous amid the altered wilderness. Familiar noises eventually stop him, and he follows them through the last wall of brush, where the trailer appears and a burning fire suggests his friends return before him. Zack enters the campsite calling their names, already sensing that something went wrong. Because the flames are still alive beside scattered gear and overturned chairs, yet nobody is visible. A heavy crack from behind replaces uncertainty with immediate survival instinct, as a huge violet beast emerges around the trailer, its body plated with armored spines, and the glow in its eyes makes it clear this is no ordinary forest animal. The creature roars and charges, giving him no opportunity to search for the missing campers. Launching its bulky frame toward him with jaws open and claws extended, Zack grips the hatchet in both hands, allowing instinct to move before terror can stop him, and meets the rush with a powerful strike far stronger than anything he expected, the blade ripping through the beast and knocking it away in a burst of blood. The impact leaves Zachary wounded as well, but somehow he remains upright after the exchange, while the monster crashes aside and he wonders when his body gained such strength. Then the memory of the first system interface returns with disturbing precision, bringing back the herald, the impossible gamble, and everything he had hoped to dismiss. He is forced to accept that it was all real as he presses a hand to his injured shoulder, yet still calls out for his friends in the hope that one of them survived nearby. The beast rises and rushes him again, making retreat the only rational option, but its second charge crosses the clearing much faster than Zack anticipated. He dives away just in time, and the monster's momentum tears into the ground, showing that although it is terrifyingly fast in a straight line, it struggles to turn once committed. That flaw gives Zack an idea, and the change in his expression reveals he has found a plan, though its success depends entirely on perfectly timing a nearly suicidal maneuver. He cuts across the predator's route, remaining close enough to keep its focus fixed on him, then taunts it openly and channels its fury toward the path he has chosen. The bait succeeds, aligning Zack, the charging beast, the trailer, and his intended destination, so he breaks into another sprint before the claws can reach his injured back. The creature races after him with such speed that the slightest misstep would be fatal, while blood slickens his fingers and he fights to keep both hands around the worn hatchet. He reaches a wall of enormous stone, turns, and invites the monster to charge one last time, as loose rocks shudder under its approach and every survival instinct urges him to flee. Instead, something stronger than fear hardens his gaze while the gap rapidly closes, even though his arms tremble and he briefly wonders whether he is finally afraid to die. Then Zack understands that the shaking comes not from fear, but from rage desperate to escape. And that fury steadies his hands, sharpening his panic into the focus the plan requires. He beats his chest, challenges the monster to kill him, and refuses to move, luring the armored hunter into an all-out leap with no remaining space to change direction. At the final possible moment, Zack vaults over its head and escapes the line of impact, allowing the creature's unstoppable momentum to carry it straight into the rock wall. The beast slams into the stone hard enough to reel backward with cracks across its armor, yet the hatred in its bleeding face makes clear that the battle is far from over. With the creature dazed, Zack hoists the hatchet and resolves to end the confrontation, driving it down through the damaged armor with enough power to trap the monster against the ground. One thick spike splits beneath the blow before the beast can regain its balance. And Zack follows with chop after chop, because beside Urkaz's impossible odds, this enemy seems beatable. The predator roars and bucks beneath him, but its battered body cannot break away from the assault, while Zack dismisses it as nothing and raises the blood-covered weapon once more. He brings the blade down again, turning every remnant of fear into unrelenting aggression, and continues cutting through hide and armor without allowing the creature a moment to recover. A final brutal strike silences the resistance and splashes dark blood over the clearing, while the system awards 100 Nexus coins for his first conventional monster kill. The armored beast lies motionless beside the shattered wall as Zack struggles to catch his breath, but his wounds finally demand a price, leaving a bloody handprint on the tree he uses for support. Every staggering step adds another crimson mark along the route back to the trailer, with blood pooling near his boots and sheer stubbornness providing the only momentum he has left. At the door, he calls for anyone inside and warns that they need to leave immediately, only to discover an injured camper and drag the unresponsive body out despite his own condition. He carries them away from the trailer, staining the earth with each painful stride, while the need to return home becomes his final defense against exhaustion and agony. Eventually, even that is not enough, and he collapses unconscious beneath the changed sky as morning light spreads through the forest around the abandoned campsite. 3 days pass before Zachary awakens near the trailer, his skull pounding and old blood coating everything, yet the hand he lifts appears strangely whole after injuries that should have ended his life. His phone shows 8:47, but the date on the display is much more alarming than the time. And a single look at it instantly clears the exhaustion from his eyes. Somehow he remained unconscious for 3 full days while the transformed wilderness carried on around him. Hannah and the others have never come back, and all of their possessions remain untouched, forcing him to consider that they may be gone for good as he wraps his remaining wounds. He then steps outside to face a reality that is still impossible to understand, particularly because his body has recovered far faster than any normal healing could allow. The blood he lost should have killed him, yet here he stands alive and breathing. His phone has no signal and the campsite's wired connection no longer works either, while the car battery is dead, closing off the simplest path back to civilization. Needing a clearer view, Zach begins climbing through the gigantic trees, all the while wondering what attacked him and whether similar creatures are hunting nearby. The idea of an alien invasion grows into fear for everyone else on the planet, but his thoughts quickly return to the father who may still be waiting at home, and to Mackenzie, his younger sibling, who could be caught in the same disaster. Through all the chaos, that gives him one firm purpose: survive long enough to get home. Renewed urgency drives him higher up the enormous trunk, using every available branch and hold, before he plants the hatchet above his head as an anchor and pulls himself farther upward. When he reaches the canopy, the utterly unfamiliar horizon steals his breath, with endless woodlands surrounding remote mountains and a scarlet beam stabbing into the sky. An ocean extends beyond view as well, confirming that the former campsite now occupies an island. And anger overtakes disbelief as Zack demands to know what the system did to Earth. He screams the question from the treetop as though the universe might finally bother to respond. Instead, achievement notifications crowd his sight, granting enormous bonuses for unprecedented first kills, then adding overpowered Slayer of Leviathans and Adventurer to an already absurd collection of titles. Zack studies the interface and questions whether the enhanced profile could truly belong to him. It identifies Zachary Atwood as level 16, with 30 free attribute points and 5,100 Nexus coins, plus elevated stats that make this horrifying new reality resemble a video game. He concludes that defeating the dice roll supplied the levels, while the titles granted most of his strength, before his active quests reveal demands to reach level 25, kill 4 heralds and an incursion general, and secure territory. The red pillar in the distance probably indicates the incursion, although he has no idea what an outpost is. The system abruptly says he qualifies to form one and invites him to do so at once. A fortified base sounds far safer than relying on an RV in a forest crawling with monsters, so Zack accepts and instructs the system to place the outpost around his location. Confirmation arrives immediately, declaring the new stronghold successfully established. That seems useful until movement beside him prompts a wary demand to identify itself. A hovering white sphere surrounded by violet power drifts toward his bloodied hatchet, and Zachary jerks backward when the seemingly harmless thing approaches much too closely. As his foot slips from the branch, he protests that the newcomer is clearly not human, but the orb retorts that he is human, apparently finding the fact equally disappointing. Zack catches a hanging vine and saves himself, only for its scaly length to begin moving, exposing a cluster of dark serpents coiled around the tree and closing on him. The moment his attention shifts, one snake loops tightly around his arm and the rest of the nest strikes, exploiting the one instant he stopped watching his surroundings. Zack struggles to hold on, remembering that this game-like existence punishes every careless error, and that gaining strength will require danger even as the tightening coils threaten to crush him. He lets go of his defensive hold and uses his free hand to launch a counterattack, catching a lunging serpent behind the head before its fangs can pierce his skin. Raw strength crushes the creature as he refuses to let another ambush take his life, though more snakes wrap around his body and hammer him against the massive trunk. Since the system rewards those who hunt and kill, survival means learning to become both, while striking serpents surround him and reduce this new world to a single merciless lesson. Strength outranks everything, and those who lack it inevitably become prey. If Zack intends to live, he will have to become the most powerful being on the island. Observing from a safe distance, the orb concludes that the deadly starting region has already sealed his fate, then remarks that an outpost might have saved him, before noticing he founded it in a tree. The realization sends the floating critic into a rant about mediocre humans and ridiculous treehouses, until a sudden burst of violence interrupts the mockery and leaves it sputtering in shock. The response comes from Zack's hatchet, now slick with the blood of freshly killed serpents, as he carves through the nest and cuts every attacking coil away from the trunk. Survival instinct overwhelms the ambush, forcing the arrogant observer's single eye open in surprise, until severed snakes litter the branches and their blood covers the victorious fighter. Zack points the dripping blade at the orb, his expression demanding answers without delay. It retracts the earlier judgment and acknowledges that this savage human may actually possess potential, but his unwavering glare makes it obvious that praise will not excuse the running commentary. The visitor therefore identifies herself as Vetha Barak, or Abby, the assistant appointed to manage his outpost. Zack introduces himself in return and asks how she can talk when she has no visible mouth. Abby calls him another fool who skipped the tutorial pixies and begins describing her role, only to discover that the system never gave him a tutorial before dropping him into this demon-filled forest. The inconsistency erases her amusement as she grasps how impossible his timing should be. Zack means 3 days rather than 3 months, and Earth's integration has only just begun. The stunned administrator tries to imagine what extraordinary exception could explain his arrival, then announces that he must be a defier and rejoices at her sudden good fortune. Abby finally tells him that Earth was absorbed into a vast multiverse without asking his permission, an ancient web of innumerable worlds that has existed for countless billions of years. Most humans receive a protected first month in tutorial towns, and his family may be among them if they were lucky. However, some people are unable to absorb the cosmic energy now saturating integrated planets, and those non-cultivators usually die when their unchanged bodies encounter the new world's threats. Back on the ground, Zack asks if defiers are fated to meet the same miserable end, and whether his bizarre beginning simply means he will die in a more dramatic fashion. Abby replies that a defier is a person who advances far beyond every reasonable prediction, someone dismissed as weak by the system who nevertheless manages to overturn that judgment. Defying destiny becomes a source of strength, although Zack's case is unusual even among such people. He refuses to describe a deadly roll of the dice as an opportunity, while Abby gives the system credit, explaining that its voice is one of the few powers respected throughout the multiverse. She also warns that this cosmic authority has no tolerance whatsoever for cowardice, so anyone who abandons a challenge can expect punishment rather than compassion. That apparently leaves Zack responsible for eliminating every demon and conquering their incursion. He bristles at being given no genuine choice beyond survival, while Abby cautions that the system is paying attention and does not want to be disappointed. Her eye suddenly shifts away as though some invisible order has cut into the discussion, and she urgently tells Zack to complete all 3-month objectives within the first month. Before she can explain, violent violet power closes around Abby and silences her, leaving Zack to call her name as her luminous form disappears from the campsite. A detached notification confirms that his outpost administrator has been recalled ahead of schedule. Zack stares at the place she occupied and demands to know why she was taken, but the ruthless 1-month deadline is the only answer she leaves behind. In another location, a refined horned demon watches a packed palace celebration while drinking by himself. Despite the festivities below, the solitary noble grips his wine in obvious irritation, until a red-haired demon woman joins him and addresses the brooding officer as Agras. She urges him to show some happiness, since tonight gives the entire clan cause to celebrate, but Agras sees nothing resembling a victory and coolly asks what she is talking about. She announces that his grandfather Akril has selected him as incursion general, an appointment coveted across the clan, while other nobles mingle nearby, among them a blonde demon accompanied by a white-haired woman. Agras bitterly observes that plenty of his relatives would gladly murder someone for such an honor. The armored white-haired escort studies the room as dangerous undercurrents move beneath the celebration, and Aaliyah advises Agras to prepare for war instead of spending all his time in brothels. He has no interest in playing their political game, content to let the fools imagine they control events. His confidence acquires a darker meaning when the blonde aristocrat suddenly vomits luminous purple poison, collapsing over the banquet table while horrified guests recoil from the spreading contamination. The man's white-haired companion demands to know who is responsible and desperately calls for aid, while an inverted glimpse of the new general suggests every schemer will eventually hang from their own imagined strings. On Earth, sunlight dances over a tranquil woodland stream far removed from the demonic banquet, where a heavily armored horned predator bends down to drink along the stony shore. It fails to notice the tiny blue-winged being chirping cheerfully above the water, until the little creature streaks past its face with perfect control and effortless speed. Hunger pushes caution aside as the predator's crimson eyes fix upon the hovering bait, allowing the fearless blue lure to land squarely on its enormous nose. The winged creature suddenly darts away, and the giant beast turns to follow its retreating light, only to expose its neck to Zack, who is already waiting behind it with his hatchet overhead. A single vicious execution drives the blade down and cleaves through the demon's skull. The kill earns him a level 100 coins and the Demon Slayer title with improved attributes against demons. At last, he stands over the carcass and allows himself to appreciate the difficult victory. Zack has noticed that each new level provides only a small number of unassigned attribute points. Reaching level 17 raises his total reserve to 32, leaving him to choose between saving them and gaining strength now. The serpent attack showed that ignorance can be lethal, however, and preserving his advantage matters more than patience. He therefore spends every point on attributes that can keep him alive immediately, granting 10 to strength, 6 to dexterity, 5 to endurance, and 11 to vitality while ignoring the mental categories. Far away, the incursion's red beacon pierces the sky and sends terrified birds fleeing through the forest. Zack calculates that only 25 days remain before the 1-month limit Abby gave him. She must have stressed that deadline for a reason before the system abruptly stopped her, especially since revealing it appears to be what caused the authority to punish and recall her. Perhaps finishing every objective during the first month will provide some exceptional hidden prize. Or maybe conditions across the island become vastly more dangerous once that period ends. Whatever the explanation, he has an opening while the rest of humanity remains inside the tutorial. Zack refuses to squander it, rinsing the fatigue and blood from his face in the stream, then rests the gore-covered weapon on his shoulder with his determination restored, and announces that he needs to resume working before his advantage is gone. Darkness falls around the campsite as Zack rebuilds beside the battered RV, cooking a heavy slab of demon meat over the fire after yet another merciless day of hunting. He considers how nearly all his strongest titles came from becoming the first person to accomplish a feat, including Born for Carnage, Ultimate Reaper, and Slayer of Leviathans, each carrying immense bonuses. Between mouthfuls, he uses the rare quiet to examine advantages the system never bothered to describe. Establishing the outpost yielded no prize, which may mean somebody else achieved that milestone first. If a common snake became so dangerous almost immediately, other survivors could be developing at a similar rate. There is no dependable way to judge how strong those outside the tutorial have already become, whether they are still comparable to trained professionals or have grown into physical monstrosities. The Outpost store might at least offer a way to improve himself or track down his family, but everything requires Nexus coins obtained by killing Barghists and other enemies. Zack browses the menu as he eats until one surprising structure captures his attention. A teleporter might finally let him escape the island and reach the people he cares about, bringing the hope of rescue close enough to draw his first sincere smile in several days. Then he sees the cost, 10 million Nexus coins, a fortune unimaginably greater than anything he possesses. The number weighs on him like a mountain assembled from an endless pile of demon corpses. Ordinary hunting will never earn so much, driving him back toward the far more dangerous quests. Those objectives promise crystals, potent structures, and improved territory if he can survive them. Still, he will not save coins the way he once hoarded stat points while immediate danger surrounds him. Every bit of currency should instead buy an advantage that helps him control the present. Only two affordable purchases seem worthwhile, the first being Eye of Discernment, which reveals basic creature information. Buying it burns cosmic markings into his eye before he turns to consider the second option. That is an F-grade small-scale mother-daughter gathering array, available for 3,000 Nexus coins. Its necklace passively gathers about 1 Barghest's worth of cosmic energy per day, taking in power even while he sleeps. Remaining still would be far too slow, however, so Zack picks up his axe and goes back to hunting. From that evening forward, almost every hour he is awake is spent stalking prey through the deadly forest. Barghists are easy targets whenever he takes the high ground and falls upon them from above. Their bodies collapsing beneath ambushes that turn superior positioning into devastating power. Whenever that advantage disappears, snapping teeth punish even the smallest error in his movement. Painful tears accompany lessons that no safe training session could ever deliver so harshly. Every battle improves him, teaching him to identify new tracks and anticipate the movements of each pack. Constant fighting also refines his axe technique until skill finally replaces uncontrolled brute force. While vicious encounters teach him to intercept incoming jaws rather than depend entirely on speed, Eye of Discernment identifies the monsters as Barghists, demonic creatures belonging to Clan Azurzak. Zack establishes emergency supply caches around the island in case he ever wanders too far to return to camp. Then he continues hunting without pause, hauling dead Barghists through the night as his power rises. He meets whole packs directly, wielding an axe that has begun to feel like part of his own body. Blood continues to flow in savage exchanges where winning still costs stamina, courage, and flesh. He slaughters scores, perhaps hundreds, and although his levels come more slowly, his combat ability advances explosively. In time, the creatures cease to resemble hunters and become nothing more than targets for him. Weeks of killing bring Zack to level 23, but he recognizes that he must move faster. His attributes have reached 59 strength, 39 dexterity, 42 endurance, and 48 vitality, with fewer than 5 days left. At the demon's headquarters, an armored officer steps into the dim office of the Incursion General. Standing with strict military discipline, the newcomer directly interrupts Agras at his administrative work. The general welcomes him pleasantly and asks how preparations for the approaching incursion are proceeding. Rydell curtly replies that the reports explain everything, assuming his commander ever chooses to read them. Agras calls delegation a basic duty of leadership, reminds Rydell that he is second in command, and offers him a seat. His subordinate remains standing and begins to question whether the general is even in a fit state. The suspicion narrows into one astonishing accusation. Has his commander gotten drunk yet again? Agras complains that everyone asks him the same thing and points out their official duties are still weeks away. Rydell agrees, while his superior offers him a drink in return for signing one authorization at once. The order promotes Agras's cousin Kivorin to Master of Scouts, and Rydell approves it without protest. Once the paperwork is done, he promises to see that all of the general's instructions are executed quickly. Agras praises him as a reliable officer who never fails when the pressure rises, while privately looking forward to escaping this Barghest nest in only a few more weeks. In the forest, Zack rests one wrapped hand against the ground as he closes in on fresh prey. He clears away a little dirt and takes up a concealed position beside the trail. An immense Barghest moves nearby with its nose raised, unaware of the hunter studying it from cover. Zack checks that the wind still favors him and confirms that the creature has not caught his scent. Its huge horns and the violet energy snapping around its frame nevertheless mark it as far more dangerous than a normal pack animal. Without warning, the giant beast finds his hiding place and destroys every belief that he remained concealed. It attacks before Zack can determine how it detected him despite the favorable breeze. He dives under the charging bulk while its claws shred the vegetation above him, and the impact of its landing pulverizes the soil and obliterates everything beneath its body. The monster searches through the scattered blood and debris, following the trail he attempted to hide. Its jaws bite through fallen prey with enough force to break bones as easily as dry branches. The instant its burning eyes locate him again, the creature erupts into another charge. Those eyes show disturbing intelligence rather than the simple appetite of an animal. Its enormous body crosses the clearing with speed that should be impossible at that size. Zack gives up on a direct fight and retreats, wondering whether the creature might be a herald. It towers over every previous opponent, with claws nearly the length of one of his arms. Only the supplies prepared at camp offer any hope of building a workable plan to kill it. Yet as he reaches the fire, unexpected movement immediately turns his relief into caution. A small imp speaks in an unknown tongue beside the flames, accompanied by a gigantic red hound. The scene brings Zack to a halt since the two demons have clearly discovered his outpost. The smaller one acts with intelligence, smelling the food and apparently asking its companion a question. From cover, Zack wonders whether they were sent to find his base and report its position. He feeds cosmic energy into Eye of Discernment to learn what he is facing. The skill identifies an imp and a gwilgi, both demonic servants of Clan Ezek. However, the intelligent scout immediately notices the inspection and whirls toward Zack's hiding place. Raising a claw, the imp forms a crackling globe of purple fire in an instant, then sends it racing at Zack, who throws his axe across himself in desperate defense. Only then does he realize that plain metal may provide no protection from compressed cosmic flame. The attack bursts against the lifted axe in a blinding eruption of violet force. Zack endures the impact, but leftover energy lashes around his body with malicious purpose, grazing his shoulder and turning a small burn into pain that reaches far deeper than flesh. The gwilgi attacks through the opening at once, sweeping its flaming tail into him, then crashing against his body as its teeth seize the wooden handle shielding him. One powerful bite shatters the hatchet that has carried him through every battle. Zack tumbles over the ground, kicks himself free, and yells at the giant hound to let go. He desperately brushes the violet flames from his shoulder before they penetrate any farther. The attack only clipped him, but it feels as though the fire scorched his soul itself. Above him, the spellcaster calmly prepares another shot while speaking incomprehensible demonic commands. Its partner grinds the broken weapon apart and readies itself to attack the now unarmed human. Wounded and holding only pieces of a ruined hatchet, Zack faces both demons at once. Yet he decides that surrendering to these odds would make him unworthy of all the impossible fortune he already received. He rushes the larger enemy with empty hands, betting his life on closing the gap before the next spell. The imp responds by throwing another orb of soul-scorching violet fire across the camp. More blasts rain down around Zack as he dives through the narrow spaces between the impacts. At the same time, the gwilgi charges from the other side and makes a collision impossible to avoid. When they meet, Zack grabs one of the hound's front legs and wraps both arms around the struggling limb. Claws stab him again and again, but he bellows through the pain and refuses to lose his grip. Using the creature's momentum, he swings its heavy body overhead and smashes it onto its back behind him. Zack climbs on top and hammers his fists into the demon's skull without relenting. Every blow is driven by the knowledge that a single hesitation will lead directly to his death. One tremendous punch whips the beast's head aside under the weight of his released strength. Still he continues, determined to kill the larger opponent before the flying caster can interfere. The imp observes with a broad, predatory smile, apparently thrilled by the opportunity Zack has presented. Before the exhausted human can move, another violet discharge detonates around him. Soul-burning energy steals the strength from his hand and leaves him with one poisonous conclusion. The incredible role, the titles, and every success were only lucky delays before an unavoidable death. Even the remembered result of 96 against 91 now seems like proof that his fortune was borrowed. A red tail coils around him and holds him upright as cosmic flame pours through his body beside the defeated hound. But cosmic energy is more than a weapon. It is the substance at the root of the whole multiverse, the common foundation threaded through its living beings, abilities, monsters, and changes. That same force has been present within Zack since the system came and the killing started on Earth. Every creature he defeated deposited more of it throughout his increasingly powerful body. The gathering array helped him perceive the energy, and his purchased skill demonstrated how it could be directed. All that remains is to seize deliberate control of it before the demons end his life here. As the tail squeezes tighter, Zack forces every current he can reach toward the center of his chest. Orange streams flare over his face as deliberate command finally takes the place of blind instinct. He grips the tail, restraining him with both hands, and warns the imp that it should not have broken his axe. The airborne demon approaches while shouting another command, still convinced the execution will be effortless. It gives a cruel shriek of pleasure at the sight of the injured human seemingly trapped without a defense. Then a whole volley of purple fireballs descends upon Zack from every direction. He pours energy into his muscles and swings the immense hound around by its tail. The gwilgi becomes a living shield, its body smashing through each of the falling flames. Orange power clarifies Zack's mind and transforms his desperate protection into a lethal response. The caster's confident eye opens wide as the incoming beast blocks its entire barrage. Their bodies meet in an orange-white blast that engulfs the two demons together. The 30th day dawns over a quiet, newly ordered campsite on the final morning of the month. Another remnant from the battle tumbles off the cliff and strikes the water beneath it, joining the caster and hound among the rocks as further evidence that Zack survived. The widening circles fade, returning the pool to stillness under a brightening sky. At the top of the cliff, Zack fixes a recovered metal head to a wooden shaft and fashions a replacement axe. He tests the rough weapon in his hands and judges it sufficient for what comes next. Being the first to level 25 would grant him a class, but the deadline leaves no room to wait. Since he has already failed to reach that mark in time, slowing down now would accomplish nothing. The system favors danger, and Zack decides to stake everything on an even more powerful opponent. Fully prepared, he walks into the woods to hunt and kill his second herald. At demon headquarters, a scarred hand presses down upon the command table with measured force. Armored fingers settle over it while two officers assess the month that has passed. Agras jokingly describes the period as busy despite all the preparations still awaiting them. Rydell replies that some people have carried considerably more of the work than others. He warns that the real burden begins when the gateway opens and cuts their force off from the clan. Outside, the enormous violet portal overshadows the demonic staging ground under a corrupted sky. Troops gather for the crossing while their general looks forward to the campaign ahead. Elsewhere, Zack plunges into combat with another towering demon and swings his rebuilt axe down at it. The black and crimson monster slips beneath the attack and counters with astonishing speed. A frantic roll carries Zack just beyond the strike before it can reach him. He skids over the ground and chooses to analyze the enemy rather than blindly rush in again. The beast snarls in response, drawing darkness over its giant frame as it prepares another charge. Eye of Discernment names it Vol, the second herald, and reveals a terrifying level of 45. The danger recalls an old day spent fishing with Zack's father. His father explained that every animal has its own special advantage, whether a bird's wings or a rabbit's speed. The boy beside him celebrated excitedly when another fish pulled against the line. His father added that slippery fish can easily wriggle free from unassisted hands. Animals, however, never invented equipment and snares, ideas understood by even the earliest humans. People do not dominate because they possess more speed or strength than the things they hunt. They prevail by recognizing obstacles and inventing solutions, the quality that truly distinguishes humanity. 2 hours before facing Vol, Zack applies that lesson by arranging concealed ropes and triggering mechanisms. He then checks the many sharpened stakes hidden across the neighboring vegetation. In the present, Vol tears through the prepared woods with its claws ready to rip him open. Zack knows that no amount of direct physical power can overcome such a vast difference in levels. One solid hit from the Herald would destroy both his mission and his life immediately. Every step is therefore devoted to avoiding contact and preventing the beast from landing even one attack. Another claw passes close enough to demonstrate just how thin his safety margin is. He draws cosmic energy through his injured body until orange light builds under his skin. Zack reinforces a heavy swing with the power and uses the crude axe to turn aside the charging monster. He has learned that cosmic energy can be sent into any particular part of his body that requires improvement. Gathering it in a single arm makes the limb harder as well as dramatically stronger. The immense predator comes for him again, denying its smaller target even a second of rest. Zack turns and provokes it with a shout, intentionally guiding the beast toward the trap he constructed. A non-cultivator's cosmic reserves are shallow, making any prolonged direct struggle impossible. He must extract value from every trace of power, since a single error will destroy the whole strategy. Vol leaps in fury and erases the carefully preserved gap with frightening ease. Zack drives himself faster as the trapping area at last comes into sight ahead. He floods both feet with energy and bursts forward in a series of orangelit strides. A nearby trunk lets him spring backward over the Herald's fully committed attack. From above, he descends with an energy-filled axe blow directed into the monster's unprotected body. The huge incursion gateway settles into a rotating purple opening before the waiting vanguard. Its first armored warriors march through the brilliant surface and into the unfamiliar planet beyond. An officer who arrives too late asks angrily why Rydell left without waiting for him. He is informed that the second-in-command has already passed through the portal on his own. Agras then approaches wearing an informed smile and accepts the subordinate's official salute. The nearby guards stiffen, aware that their general has set another hidden scheme in motion. Agras summons the questioning officer and tells him he will not be joining Rydell after all. A chilly green-eyed smile reveals the personal danger concealed within the order. Deep in the forest, Zack races onward while orange energy burns around his overtaxed form. He understands that his uncontrolled release is driving his endurance far beyond safe limits. Human tissue cannot tolerate so much cosmic force, and his muscles split painfully under the pressure. Vol remains directly behind him, making it impossible to reduce his speed. The trap lies only a little farther ahead, and he must cross its threshold before his pursuer catches him. Red-black power erupts around the snarling herald as it launches itself forward. Hunter and monster crash through the trees toward the killing field Zack prepared. Although muscle tears throughout his body, he grits his teeth and rejects the impulse to surrender. The sharpened stakes hidden inside thick brush finally emerge exactly where he left them. Behind him, the relentless creature barrels into the narrow lane formed between those concealed weapons. Zack waits until the last instant before turning sharply on a foot reinforced with cosmic energy. He escapes to the side as the enormous herald gives itself completely to the root of the trap. Vol growls and races farther down the prepared passage, still pursuing its injured target. Then one enormous paw comes down squarely on a trigger concealed under the forest litter. Watching from cover, Zack studies the device and wonders whether his improvised mechanism will function at all. Sharpened spears suddenly burst inward from either side and catch the creature in a vicious crossfire. Even impaled, the herald stays upright, its luminous eye burning with fury. At last, the accumulated injuries rupture its fiery core and strip black-violet power from its form. Golden energy surges into Zack while the system declares level 25, a finished quest and access to a class. He looks at the flood of power in amazement and can barely say aloud that he actually won. Exhaustion gives way to laughter as the scale of the accomplishment finally reaches him. Zack raises a hand toward the interface and proudly reminds it that he just eliminated another herald. His celebration ends when a fresh demonic hound springs from the darkness at his exposed back. More red eyes appear between the surrounding trees, revealing an entire pack closing around him. The new danger reduces his triumph to one muttered curse. Countless silhouettes advance through the woods as the pounding of their bodies grows louder. Elsewhere, purple storm clouds twist above the clan portal as a hidden dispute turns violent. A terrified officer begs for mercy while Agras holds a weapon against his throat. The general answers with one stroke, killing the man before any bargaining can begin. His victim crashes beside his feet and sprays dark blood across the stone. Agras stands calmly among dead soldiers while the remaining members of his group keep guard. One warrior in borrowed armor finally asks how long they must continue wearing the disguises. Agras tells Noms to keep his stolen armor on until given permission to remove it, drawing a doubtful response. Close by, an injured survivor complains that paralysis has robbed him of all movement. Aaliyah asks whether she is included in the secrecy and receives an uncompromising yes. No one on the new planet can be allowed to learn what they did while Agras keeps control of every detail. Another disguised plotter questions leaving their grandparents' protection once the gateway seals behind them. Yet their leader remains certain even as the point of no return draws close. A companion warns that afterward their little faction will be entirely isolated from home. Agras dismisses the concern with a composed reply to the wary Ilver beside him. He condemns the treacherous clan they are leaving and decides an unknown world can hardly be more dangerous. Only a single final action remains before the operation they prepared can properly begin. Agras and his chosen followers step through the radiant portal to encounter Earth's inhabitants themselves. At the same time, Zack runs between the trees with a flood of demon hounds racing behind him. The creatures seem to fill the forest, turning flight into another absurd trial of stamina. Red-eyed beasts close from both sides while his damaged body fights to keep moving. He curses Abby for failing to mention that a herald's death might attract every monster on the island. His weakening legs make it clear that almost none of his cosmic energy remains. The battle against Vol consumed nearly his full reserve, leaving too little to outpace the horde. A blue-black hound crashes into his route and threatens to tear him apart on the spot. Another, larger crimson creature leaps over him with its jaws opened wide. The exhausted warrior meets the attack with a devastating axe strike that breaks through it. Trapped among snapping mouths, Zack keeps running and hitting anything that blocks a route out. After killing another hound, he sees a thin orange current flow back into his hand. Every death restores a small amount of cosmic energy, almost enough to cover what each fight costs him. The rest of the pack surges closer and begins another synchronized attack from all directions. Zack realizes there is no need to flee if every pursuer can instead become fuel. The closest red-eyed beast blocks his way with an exposed set of teeth and a roar. His glowing axe splits the charging creature before a second one can strike his side. The hunter abandons escape for one far simpler goal: slaughter the entire horde. In the distance, the incursion's scarlet beacon cuts through storm clouds above the occupied settlement at night. Competing officers argue that someone needs to lead while their general is away, each reaching for authority. The white-haired commander instructs Kivorin to assemble scouts and discover what destroyed Harold Urk has. The scoutmaster calmly states that the relevant teams are already gathering beyond the fortress. Discussion returns to improving their outpost until unexpected movement interrupts the meeting. Everyone surrounding the command table looks toward a new arrival coming through the portal. One armored boot passes the threshold with unhurried confidence. Agras emerges in black armor, followed by the small group of companions he selected. Across the table, the general and his white-haired deputy silently assess one another. Meanwhile, after hours of combat, Zack staggers through the nighttime forest soaked in blood. A long wake of scattered bodies and discarded equipment records the scale of the massacre behind him. His body is close to collapse, but he continues because he must reach something hidden ahead. Beyond the field of dead hounds, Zack finally locates one of his concealed supply stores. He limps to the marked tree and leans against its trunk to keep himself standing. With the last of his strength, he climbs toward the provisions concealed in the branches. A wide limb high above the bloody ground gives him a temporary refuge. His battered body slumps against the bark as total exhaustion takes control. Morning birds sing among peaceful leaves when daylight returns to the canopy. Their calls wake the injured fighter after the long sleep he desperately needed. Zack notes that more than 1 month has gone by and is surprised the world has not yet collapsed. The faraway red beam nevertheless confirms that the island's central threat is still present. Under the gaze of a dark bird, he wraps his damaged arms again before it flies off. His rapid healing continues to amaze him, even though his recovery is still incomplete. Zack starts the lengthy journey back to camp, planning to choose his available class once he arrives. Then the feeling that someone is following him cuts through the fatigue and puts him on alert. A horned scout with red hair and a heavy polearm moves along the nearby trail of corpses. The demon inspects the dead carefully, drawing closer to Zack's concealed location with every step. Realizing one of the actual invaders has found the area, Zack ducks into the brush. The stranger kneels over a slain hound and speaks unknown phrases while examining its injuries. His peculiar report continues until the clearly recognizable name Agras confirms a link to the incursion. Zack bursts from hiding behind him with the axe already falling toward the scout's back. The surprise blow lands with a thunderous crash before either of them can say another word. The strike knocks the demon unconscious, and Zack takes the scout's much finer battle axe. Rather than leave him there, however, the survivor throws the captive over his shoulders and carries him deeper into the woods. He ties the armored prisoner firmly to a chair and waits nearby until night. A sudden splash of cold water across the face brings the demon back to consciousness. The captive snaps awake, tests his bonds, and frantically calls out for somebody named Vale. The captured blade pressed to his throat turns the warning into immediate silence. Zack greets him evenly, satisfied that they are somehow able to understand one another. He then demands to know how many invaders are coming into this world through the gateway. Eye of Discernment names the prisoner Azan, a level 33 member of the hostile clan. When the demon refuses to speak, Zack cuts him and repeats the question with growing anger. Crimson cosmic force bursts from the bound scout and begins tearing all the restraints apart. The fanatic denounces his captor and swears that the human will burn beside him. Zack has time for only a curse once the prisoner's suicidal plan becomes unmistakable. Azan releases his entire reserve at point-blank range, producing a massive explosion around both of them. Flaming wreckage and fragments of equipment scatter in every direction from the destroyed interrogation site. The dazed survivor understands that his prisoner intentionally collected enough power to obliterate himself. The scout willingly sacrificed everything simply to deny a human any useful intelligence. Zack spits into the crater in frustration and admits these demons will not be easy to handle. He then climbs a nearby tree and observes the deserted campsite from a concealed perch. Several quiet hours pass without any response, convincing him that no one is coming to inspect the explosion. Once satisfied, Zack descends and returns to the campsite beneath him. He regrets that the demon destroyed himself before Zack could examine a full set of proper equipment. Had he anticipated the suicide, he would have removed every item from the captive in advance. The red violence of the self-destruction still flashes vividly through his memory. It carried enough force to erase Azan and turn the entire interrogation area into debris. Fortunately, the stolen battle axe endured the blast and can replace his failing homemade weapon. The polished steel now hanging at his side represents a substantial improvement in combat. More importantly, Zack has reached level 25 and can immediately select a class. Before looking at the choices, however, he needs to finish one project for the camp's defense. He enters the shop and buys an F-grade small-scale illusion array. Cascading blue radiance materializes a heavy storage box beside him. Inside are several violet stakes designed to be arranged around the campsite's perimeter. Zack circles the grounds and drives each shining component into the soil in sequence. The protective formation closes when the final stake settles into position. Its system controls now allow him to activate the completed illusion array. Purple power surges out of the anchors and starts knitting a cover through the air above. A translucent, crackling shell spreads into a curve that encloses the entire camp. Once finished, the dome hides every tent, vehicle, structure, and inhabitant inside it. Zack is astonished that observers beyond the barrier will see the land as completely empty. The camouflage should prevent intelligent demons from stumbling across his home with ease. Now that the camp is concealed, Zack returns to the class choice unlocked at level 25. He checks the completed unlimited potential objective, which asks whether he is ready to choose. Expecting his reward to open freely, he accepts without hesitation. Instead, a red warning says he first needs a Nexus node costing 6,000 coins. Zack erupts in anger since those savings required endless grinding and the defeat of a herald. He pays anyway, hoping such an expensive structure will also contribute to the security or secrecy of his base. The purchase is confirmed and a crystalline terminal forms in front of him. Its base management interface permits far richer access to system features that were previously unavailable. When Zack's new battle axe touches the terminal, bright symbols come alive along the crystal. A large blue menu extends from it and illuminates the surrounding darkness. Precisely 5 possible classes scroll across the selection window for him to evaluate. His earlier annoyance fades now that the promised decision is finally within reach. The first option is the Common Fighter, a direct warrior familiar with all varieties of close-range weapons. Next comes the Common Acolyte, an elemental user intended for magic-focused battle. The Uncommon Marine specializes in warfare conducted on oceans and ships. Another uncommon choice, Demon Hunter, focuses on discovering, studying, and destroying demons efficiently. The final option is the rare Hatchetman, an evolvable lumberjack warrior who regards armies as forests waiting to be cut down. Every class is F-grade and presumably shaped by Zack's actions, but their potential evolutions make them important. Since any of them may become something far greater, the decision could define the rest of his life. Zack first discards the ordinary fighter and acolyte while the rarer alternatives remain. Demon Hunter offers obvious short-term strength, though limiting himself to one type of enemy could damage his future. Bonuses against demons will be useless if entirely different creatures attack without warning. Staying alive means preparing for any possible foe instead of only the invaders he currently knows. Marine is more restrictive still, tying its usefulness to the ocean and naval engagements. Removing it from consideration leaves the rare axe class as the sole serious candidate. It appears to reward his constant danger, and being limited to axes hardly feels like a disadvantage. Zack smiles at the alleged restriction and remarks that relying on axes sounds more like a benefit. He puts both hands on the Nexus node and prepares to confirm the final choice. The word Hatchetman leaves his mouth as a storm of many-colored energy erupts around him. The system validates the rare class and converts his accumulated accomplishments into raw power. It also awards Full of Class, Rarefied Being, and the World-First Trailblazer, totaling 7 points to every attribute. Golden Force runs through Zack's muscles as the class reconstructs his entire body. Wave after wave strengthens his limbs and organs under pressure intense enough to overwhelm him. Notifications record gains to strength, dexterity, endurance, vitality, intelligence, wisdom, and luck. Finally, the transformation drives him to his knees, gasping and drenched in sweat beneath its weight. From the ground, Zack celebrates becoming the first person anywhere on Earth to obtain a class. His new profile shows a level 25 rare Hatchetman with attributes far beyond their previous values. Strength alone has risen to 92 after the class added an extraordinary 28 points. Golden currents continue traveling along one newly hardened arm under its wrappings. Zack has only one pleased word for the reason behind his astonishing development. Class. Hatchetman provides enormous strength growth, though Axe Mastery, Chop, and Forester's Constitution must be earned through quests. Even rare abilities require effort, so the newly strengthened fighter has no intention of sitting still. Carrying the captured battle axe, he leaves to personally hunt the remaining heralds and their incursion general. Elsewhere, a blue-haired demon describes the incursion as a splendid chance almost squandered by incompetent leadership. He reclines arrogantly on a throne transported into the wilderness, while armored attendants protect his comfort. In his view, sending beast packs through the portal first was an act of pure cowardice. Unaware of the demon's discussion, Zack advances a class objective by chopping thick logs at camp. His enemies assume that this isolated island contains nothing genuinely capable of threatening them. They believe the two missing heralds simply destroyed one another as soon as they arrived. Their death supposedly wasted a month that should have been used to gain an advantage over competing incursions. At least the sacrifice of 10,000 slaves needed to open the gateway allegedly pleased the merciless heavens. The blue-haired leader accepts that supposed blessing with a cold expression of satisfaction. He then studies updates from scouting teams spread across distant forests and mountains. One report concerns an abundant vein of Nexus crystals hidden far beneath a rocky mountain. Even its smallest pocket may be worth more than the combined wealth of many senior clan members. Such a discovery naturally tempts the ambitious master of scouts leading this expedition. Kevorn privately reasons that the clan does not need to hear about every valuable thing he uncovers. Tired of walking, he orders 2 assistants to establish a camp for him. He asks the female scout whether a ridge with a view will do, and she agrees despite the strange climate. Kevorn takes his place only after servants finish arranging a refined table and chair outdoors. Kayla accepts his offer to join him, though she continues addressing the pompous scoutmaster with formal respect. She is surprised that a figure of his importance can spare time for a private dinner amid the incursion preparations. He waves the concern away, insisting that he can always make time for matters he considers important. A cloud of gnats descends on the meal, instantly spoiling his expensive comfort and carefully performed confidence. After all his effort to bring Kayla here, Kevorn shouts for Gormer to drive the insects away. No one replies, and the increasingly irritated noble calls the subordinate's name again. Instead, Kayla draws her weapon when an unforeseen danger crashes toward their table. Zack drops from above with his huge axe lifted, converting the peaceful dinner into a surprise attack. The demons identify him as a native and immediately shout for the intruder to be killed. His wrapped hand pulls a blade, meeting their alarm with ruthless preparation for close combat. He snaps the short weapon downward at the first soldier rushing him with a spear. The bright edge cuts past the boards and strikes with enough force to lodge deeply. Kevorn counters with a broadsword stroke aimed at the airborne attacker. Their enchanted weapons collide in a burst of blue lightning that washes over the ridge. As the demon tears his blade free, he realizes that humans inhabit the recently integrated planet. A smirk follows as he decides they are merely pests to be exterminated by his superior strength. Zack braces the battle axe against a tremendous blade and accepts its descending weight head-on. Class-enhanced muscle wins the contest, wrenching the connected weapons violently aside. A second armored demon attacks, but the Hatchetman roars and blocks him under the mounting pressure. Enemies close around Zack and strike together, forcing him to guard against several directions at once. Rather than remain surrounded, he answers with a jarring counter that destroys one soldier's defense. A towering crimson shockwave throws the armored demon away and opens room around Zack. Kevorn retaliates by smashing his lightning-covered greatsword down and blasting a crater into the earth. To his shock, the human has already moved behind him with far greater speed than expected. A bandaged hand catches Kivorin's shoulder and jerks him backward before he can face the threat. The demon sends twisting black power through the broken soil, hurling his attacker into the air. Tendrils strike Zack while he rises and force a cry from his lungs. An archer uses the opening to drive an arrow deep into the top of his back. He hits the ground breathing heavily as the focused assault finally pierces his improved defenses. Kivorin gives him no pause, charging after him with a massive blade and a shouted promise of death. Zack spots the falling edge at the final second and prevents the blow from executing him cleanly. His axe shaft catches the lightning-charged weapon and stops it only inches away from his face. Kivorin cannot understand how a native of a month-old world could possess such power. Zack uses the moment of confusion to reach through their locked weapons and sees a fistful of blue hair. He forces the demon's head down as Kivorin wonders how any local human became so strong. Without releasing him, Zack knocks aside a frantic counterattack and refuses to yield any ground. The battle axe sweeps horizontally from close range and makes the dazed demon withdraw at once. Zack's intent gaze follows every adjustment and searches for the next destructive line of attack. Kivorin's returning sword flashes across his face and opens a thin wound on the cheek. Zack jumps beyond the next swing and reestablishes distance with the vicious duel still undecided. Bloodied but unwilling to appear vulnerable, he wipes his mouth and evaluates the opponent. The two fighters pause across the wrecked camp after their explosive sequence of attacks. Another wounded guard waits behind Zack for any distraction that might create an opportunity. Kivorin admits that the native is remarkably capable for a human, though his disdain has only weakened slightly. He has heard tales of unusual mortals who survive after everyone else has discarded them. These rejects are born without the ability to cultivate, labeled worthless, yet still resist annihilation. Like persistent insects, they return regardless of how brutally superior forces try to crush them. They hold their weapons through hopeless trials while the heavens repeatedly test their right to exist. Their refusal to submit eventually compels those same pitiless heavens to recognize their promise. Zack's roll of 96 against Urkaz's 91 was exactly such a rejection of impossible odds. That is why people like him are feared throughout the multiverse under the name Defiers. Their potential can be so vast that even this arrogant invader cannot dismiss it entirely. Kivorin nevertheless calls the promise meaningless now that this Defier has chosen to stand against him. He shoots forward inside a black-red aura and makes the injured Hatchetman desperately evade. Supernatural acceleration takes him around Zack's back, where another brutal counterstrike is already waiting. Zack's battle axe lands cleanly on the ornate breastplate, only for a brilliant circular shield to form over it. He realizes a moment too late that the perfect hit has caused no damage at all. The armor discharges the captured force and blasts Zack backward over the battlefield. Kivorin remains untouched behind the rotating runes built into his enchanted protection. Sliding through the dirt, Zack curses an enemy whose equipment can send attacks back at their source. Aware that the armor reflects impact, Zack rips the dining table up and shoves it into the charging demon's root. The crimson table smashes across Kivorin and covers his enchanted protection in splintered boards and scattered food. He rages at the disgrace of being attacked with such improvised tricks by a supposedly lesser native. Another powerful push slams the wreckage into him once more and sends the grotesque meal flying. The stunned Scoutmaster breaks out of the debris, unable to understand how Zack redirected his charge. Zack takes the opportunity to leap upward and close both hands around the axe raised over his head. He descends with a ruinous overhead strike while a nearby soldier can only watch. The guard calls desperately to his commander after realizing the human has broken past their defense. The force of the blow hurls Kivorin into a bank of rock. Even among the rubble, he cautions the approaching Zack against letting down his guard. A black-red counterattack erupts from below the moment the human steps close enough. The demon's confidence weakens when Zack remains upright within the blast. Zack responds with another axe strike that splits the earth but only narrowly misses the retreating target. Kivorin slips beneath the swing and knocks both of Zack's legs from under him. A roaring tackle then drives the human into the ridge hard enough to shake it. Their fight collapses into chaos, each combatant gripping the other's face with one hand. Zack's fingers tight until the armored noble grunts, even as Kivorin claws into his own features. He roars through the pressure and refuses to surrender control of the grapple. Struggling to remove the wrapped hand, Kivorin commands Kayla to fire. His other fist crashes into the pinned man's jaw while he waits for the arrow. A dagger flashes in his free hand and plunges deep into Zack's stomach as the demon holds his face down. The pain loosens Zack's grip, but he retaliates by tearing at Kivorin's injured eye until the demon screams. Blood covers the Scoutmaster's grin as he savors the knife buried in vulnerable flesh. He twists the dagger and pushes harder against the human's face with his dark glove. Meanwhile, Zack quietly searches the ground with one wrapped hand until his fingers touch the fallen axe shaft. Kivorin mocks the Great Defier and asks whether this pitiful struggle is the full extent of his resistance. Zack closes his hand around the weapon, turning the taunt into a deadly mistake. Still unaware of the prepared counter, Kivorin starts dismissing him as a mere insect. A point-blank killing blow interrupts the insult, ends Kivorin instantly, and grants Zack another level. The victor lies gasping beneath the body, the arrow still lodged in his back as he tries to recover. Trembling from his many injuries, he forces himself to stand and admits that the battle was painful. Kayla is the only enemy left on her feet, bow trained on him as she orders him not to move. She flips backward into a shooting stance and draws again before he can regain his balance. Her arrow strikes his torso in the middle of his reply, adding another injury to the aftermath. Zack winces around the embedded shaft, but fatigue cannot soften the threat in his stare. Morning Kivoran, the archer, repeats her order and swears Zack will never escape after killing him. Barely able to stand, he nevertheless promises with icy certainty that she will suffer. Later, the ridge is silent among the demon corpses while the battered survivor regains his breath. Since Azan destroyed his possessions, Zack searches Kivoran's armor for equipment worth taking. He discovers a decorated drawstring bag that feels far heavier than its tiny shape should permit. Unfastening it exposes a rotating pocket dimension, and Zack stares into its impossible depth. An entire roomful of furniture, dishes, food, containers, and miscellaneous items occupies the small pouch. Zack wonders whether Kivorn intended to conquer a planet or simply hold a luxurious picnic. Then piles of shining crystals inside the dimensional space attract his attention. Eye of Discernment calls them F-grade Nexus crystals, compressed cosmic power useful for recovery and advancement. Each crystal feels like a miniature sun in his palm, with tremendous energy trapped within its surfaces. His quest screen says that finishing off with their heads will reward 10 even better E-grade crystals. Zack starts absorbing one while noting that these remarkable objects are only considered F-grade. 30 minutes later, sufficiently recovered to travel, he straps the dead commander's magical armor onto his own body. The spacious pouch joins his belt, converting the invader's extravagance into convenient portable storage. Pleased with the equipment, he offers the corpse a sarcastic thanks for the improvements. Kivorn's greatsword is of little direct use to a hatchetman restricted to axes. Leaving it behind for other demons would be foolish, however, so Zack takes it as well. The giant sword disappears easily into the dimensional bag with the rest of its former owner's belongings. Another interface sound draws his attention to the progress made on his active goals. Off with their heads now reads 2 of 5, but Incursion Master still refuses to move beyond 0 of 3. Since a month has elapsed already, the defensive objective may require destroying the entire incursion before it begins counting. Axe Mastery has reached 132, Chop 4,854, while Forester's Constitution remains at 0. Zack has killed the Gwilgi and Bargast heralds, leaving an imp herald and a fourth creature of unknown type. He still has no idea where either of them or the incursion general can be found. With no trail leading to the remaining monsters, Zack sees only one useful course of action. He will search for the general by carrying the ward directly to the demon's central fortress. From concealment, he watches the stronghold beneath its scarlet pillar and promises the invaders an invasion of their own. Inside the base, nervous troops are urgently dispatched through the gate after another patrol comes under attack. Guards call for explanations as messages arrive that their companions outside are being butchered. The response unit rushes into the darkness without realizing the killer is intentionally pulling them away from support. They arrive at a crude checkpoint outside the walls and find only unnatural silence. Fear finally penetrates their discipline when a shaken soldier asks what took place there. Bodies litter the path under the spiked gate, evidence that the patrol was efficiently annihilated. Zack withdraws through the undergrowth after 28 new kills increase Axe Mastery to 160. He understands that sheer strength will never reach the general when thousands of soldiers guard the entrance. Disguising himself also proved impossible, since alert sentries saw through his stolen armor immediately. Instead, he studies groups moving between the fortress and a mountain tunnel, looking for a different approach. Most demons labor on construction inside the walls, while others continually mine and scout the neighboring peaks. Their conduct unsettles Zack because he first assumed they were system-made characters created solely as an obstacle. But they joke, compete, and laugh with one another, unmistakably behaving like living people. He begins to wonder whether they willingly invaded or were dragged into the disaster just as he was. Sympathy cannot alter the danger in front of him, and his determination only grows firmer. They entered his island and attacked his home, so his axe will deliver every message he has for them. Giving up would mean forsaking his family and the chance to become the genuine defier Abby believed he could be. Zack accepts the need for more demon deaths and decides to eliminate both heralds before confronting their commander. He leaves the area around the stronghold and travels into the island's enormous mountain chain. The plan is to remove every remaining quest target before returning to fight the general. Actually locating 2 concealed creatures is much harder than making the decision to pursue them. He searches the forests and cuts down isolated demons, lifting Axe Mastery from 160 to 196. The hunt carries him toward the borders of the island and drives the count onward to 287. He explores narrow caves that lead nowhere and emerges with Axe Mastery at 448. Still certain the heralds are somewhere on the island, Zack climbs another vertical rock face without assistance. He reaches the peak after sunrise, his cloak snapping in the clear mountain air. The empty horizon draws one exhausted sigh after yet another apparently fruitless search. Then the elevated view shows that he has been looking in all the wrong places below. Movement among the trees on a cliff opposite him catches his sharpened attention. A massive monkey with stone hide and orange glowing cracks sits silently upon a branch. Zack readies his axe, approaches, and asks the creature what exactly it is. Eye of Discernment identifies it as a beastray stone monkey belonging to Clan Azurzak. This confirms that the last herald types are stone monkey and imp, the breakthrough his search needed. The rocky beast opens a mouth bright as a furnace and hurls itself from the tree. It races down the narrow passage with a giant stone fist drawn back to strike. Zack stands his ground and calmly follows the monster's approach. At the last moment, he slips beneath the crushing punch as it rips through the air next to him. A single precise axe attack splits the stone monkey, earning 350 coins and increasing axe mastery to 899. Believing more of the beasts must live in this territory, he ventures farther into the range in search of their herald. Several hidden ledges erupt with simultaneous shrieks, signaling an ambush by a full troop. Zack turns to meet another stone attacker, surprised that the apparently solitary beast had companions. Dozens of monkeys pour down the slope as one, their molten fists prepared for battle. He smiles and welcomes the apes, curious to learn how well their rocky bodies resist his weapon. Wide axe swings meet the horde, cracking luminous armor and throwing fragments across the mountainside. Stone bodies, streaks of blue power, and continuous attacks blend together across the slope. The non-stop cutting moves axe mastery to 900 as Zack's handling of the weapon grows more exact. Each swing echoes the uncertainty and unanswered questions that have pursued him since integration. Yet continued combat pushes the count to 939 as repetition turns reflex into real technique. A straightforward truth emerges from his thoughts. Greater numbers of opponents force him to learn faster. His axe finds cleaner paths between attacks while the quest approaches its endpoint. At 982, every defeated creature makes the weapon settle more naturally into his grip. The counter rises to 995 and 996 as a flood of shattered monkeys collapses around him. Two additional kills bring it to 997 and 998 without interrupting his tempo. Another execution in midair leaves only one more enemy before axe mastery is fulfilled. The 1000th death completes the class mission and surrounds Zack in brilliant golden light. Rather than merely unlocking a skill, it replaces the mountain with a radiant vision of a castle. Zack watches in bewilderment as a gigantic blade cuts across this unknown reality. The scene contains an endless host of colossal warriors and winged figures filling the battlefield. Their ordered ranks project strength beyond anything Zack has witnessed since integration. Somehow the overpowering army guides his attention toward one unlikely individual. A bald man carrying an axe steps forward alone in plain robes and assumes a relaxed stance. He releases a single measured breath. An unnatural stillness settles over the whole battlefield. Both hands slowly raise the weapon overhead while invisible pressure condenses around its edge. Violet energy bursts over the axeman and his blade, warping the air under unimaginable weight. One controlled downward cut tears through the vast army with enough force to shake reality. The display overwhelms Zack's senses and brands the devastating principle behind it into his thoughts. On the mountain, his body unconsciously copies the movement and strikes an attacking monkey with purple force. The system awards a Tao seed of heaviness as the newly understood idea courses through him. His blow crushes the stone creature into fragments beneath an eruption of unprecedented weight. Zack studies his glowing arm in shock and asks what just occurred. He sits among the broken bodies beneath a tree while the notification remains before him. The term Tao is vaguely familiar from Eastern faith or legend, but he knows little else about it. Even at its early stage, the heaviness seed immediately supplies 10 strength and 5 endurance. Whatever its rules may be, the measurable bonuses prove that the mystical concept is real. The axe also feels changed in his hand, as though he finally understands the idea at its foundation. That vision exposed a small part of the universal truth behind physical weight. Compared with the bald master's truly weighted blow, Zack's old attacks now seem like empty mimicry. Remaining seated, he focuses on the heaviness within a swing and tries to place that quality into his strikes. Zack rises and guides the axe through a deliberate arc, feeding his fresh insight into the weapon. The test releases monstrous force, cleaving stone bodies and ripping a trench into the mountainside. Still, the bald axeman's attack contained much more than heaviness by itself. Incomprehensible precision and depth supported the world-splitting strike shown in the vision. Entire dimensions of the Tao remain far beyond Zack's newborn understanding. Rather than becoming discouraged, he asks whether he might one day achieve the same level of power. The system responds with Child of Tao, naming him Earth's third person to gain enlightenment and awarding major attributes. Third place means 2 other humans have already created Tao seeds, heightening Zack's sense of competition. It confirms that dangerous rivals are advancing elsewhere while he stays trapped on the island. He imagines naturally gifted cultivators who could already have grown beyond him. The tutorial has also ended, freeing humanity to regroup, rebuild, and begin resisting. Zack has remained among the leaders, but now knows unknown contenders have reached some milestones before him. His level 28 profile now shows 136 strength, 77 endurance, and 134,780 Nexus coins. That hard-earned strength only urges him onward, since the strongest survivors will shape Earth's new future. He then sees that Chop climbed to 9,952 out of 10,000 during the slaughter in the mountains. Zack leans back against the trunk, pleased that another class ability is nearly unlocked. Inside the torchlit throne room of the Demon Fortress, disturbing information arrives for Agres. He turns on the reporting subordinate and insists on hearing exactly what happened to Kivorin. The answer is that Kivorin is dead, probably killed by the same group responsible for Vol and Urkaz. Based on the immense power and limited tracks, the scouts estimate a force of at least 10 elite fighters. Agres hides his pleasure behind a cough while inwardly celebrating the idiot's death. He blames Earth's air for his reaction, although he does regret losing Kayla after her effective spying. Agras sends a team to inspect Cindermane and Quigo, recognizing that the natives may be unexpectedly capable. In private, he hopes Rydell and the locals wipe each other out and resolve all his political difficulties at once. Ilver tells him that his grin is becoming obvious and receives an annoyed order to be quiet. Among the peaks, Zack repeatedly chops an immense tree until his quest counter reaches 9,999. Covered in sweat, he wipes his brow and looks up at the trunk that still refuses to fall. He lifts the battle axe for one last strike, ready to unlock the next class ability. Violet energy erupts down the blade as Chop reaches 10,000 and registers completion. Crackling cosmic force wraps both weapon and wielder to announce another increase in power. Zack closes his newly energized fingers and senses added strength settle through his hand. He stretches his worn body toward the sky as the supernatural radiance slowly disappears. Distant cries draw his gaze to a new gathering of stone monkeys beneath him. One gigantic creature notices the intruder on the opposite slope and turns abruptly. The entire group charges down the vertical rock with mouths glowing like lava. Zack stands to meet the swarm, exhaustion instantly giving way to concentration. Purple-blue energy completely surrounds his enhanced battle axe as he tightens his grip. The monkeys jump together from the cliffs and descend like a stone avalanche. Zack channels power into the raised weapon and prepares to meet the mass attack directly. As the stampede closes in, he calmly calls on Chop for its first activation. His forward swing extends a dense blade of violet power far past the axe itself. The enhanced arc catches the leading monkey in the air and collapses its stone form under enormous force. Without stopping, it tears through the rest of the attacking troop in one brilliant sweep across the mountain. Once the debris clears, Zack concludes that the range must be protecting something valuable. The patterns he witnessed while relentlessly moving through their domain reinforce the suspicion. Cosmic power becomes denser every time he climbs farther into the high peaks. The stone monkeys also grow more dangerous and patrol the cliffs like organized guards. Their conduct resembles the coordinated humanoid invaders more than the simple creatures elsewhere on the island. They travel in groups, and many troops visibly obey a particular leader. That leader is usually a larger, stronger monkey that tests the air and directs its subordinates. Even these commanders, however, cannot pose a meaningful threat to the advancing hatchetmen. Zack spends several more days climbing through the ring of mountains and checking every summit. Another sunset arrives with no herald and no answer for why the region is so heavily protected. A final deliberate scan suddenly brings understanding into his golden eyes. Zack speaks aloud as he realizes the herald was never concealed on the mountaintops. Deep below him, a gigantic crimson tree shines in the middle of a hidden valley. He approaches the edge and prepares to climb down into the isolated basin. One deeply unsettling detail stops him before he can move immediately. Zack warns himself to wait, certain that he has missed a much more dangerous reality. At the bottom of the valley, he reaches the luminous red tree and halts before the unnatural sight. He asks what could have transformed this secret mountain refuge into such a place. Cindermane sits beneath the trunk, a level 58 stone monkey herald overflowing with compressed power. The instant Zack nears its resting ground, the creature's golden eyes open. Before the herald can stand, he attacks with a fully empowered downward swing. Cindermane catches the blade in his bare hands as the collision fractures the stone underfoot. One hand locks onto the metal head and arrests the powerful attack completely. Neither fighter releases the trapped axe while they stare directly into one another's faces. A concentrated spark of gold suddenly burns to life in the herald's dark eye. Yellow cosmic power explodes in crackling waves across his muscular frame. The captured weapon begins trembling, and Zack realizes the first exchange has turned against him. Cindermane abruptly overturns the struggle and sends overwhelming strength through his opponent. A spiraling shockwave launches the hatchetman backward and rips through the sanctuary. Regaining control, Zack confirms he has found the true herald, despite being almost 3 times stronger than when he fought Vol. Since then he has obtained the Hatchetman class, a Dao Seed, and several combat abilities. Cindermane still stopped his axe bare-handed, proving much stronger than the previous Barghest Herald. The two opponents circle with space between them, quietly measuring distance and reach. Zack is first to attack again, rushing in at full speed with his axe directed at the herald. The stone monkey raises an arm surrounded by burning yellow force to meet him. Their collision erupts into a rumbling shockwave that destroys the ground nearby. A golden retaliation throws Zack into a rocky wall and cracks the mountainside around him. From the collapse, he carves a violet attack through stone and oncoming force. Zack steps out of the broken rubble smiling confidently despite the brutal impact. Both fighters rebound through the valley and tear loose stones from its enclosing cliffs. Another enormous arc of chop shrieks across the sanctuary toward Cindermane. As Zack approaches, the herald snaps his muscular tail upward into the human's chin. Zack staggers but forces himself through the hit and sweeps the axe across the monkey's body. The heavy edge finally pierces Cindermane's hardened defenses and drives the red-haired herald backward. Blood scatters over the luminous blade, confirming that the creature is not invulnerable. Around the scarlet tree, the battle accelerates into constant evasions, blocks, and circling tail attacks. Zack drops beneath another broad sweep and sprints away across the valley floor. Cindermane stays close behind, refusing to surrender any ground near the tree. The repeated movement shows that he continually places himself between the intruder and the sacred trunk. With a smile, Zack decides he only needs to make cutting down the tree appear important. He abruptly charges the trunk and compels its enraged protector to follow. A tremendous overhead axe swing then descends toward the tree's exposed base. Just as intended, Cindermane places his own body between the weapon and the target. Although already wounded, he catches the blow and roars through the added pain. Dark claws grip the edge, accepting further injury rather than allowing it to reach the trunk. Zack sees before him a warrior certain of his duty and willing to give up everything for it. Seeing his own immovable determination reflected in the herald, Zack lets go of the axe and throws a punch. Purple power detonates from his fist across Cindermane's face and draws a bloody snarl. The wounded guardian responds with a tremendous roar that rolls throughout the basin. Zack recognizes the rallying call of the ordinary monkeys and realizes the duel must end at once. Before he can finish it, a boulder thrown from outside the fight crashes into his head. Badly disoriented, he tumbles over the fractured ground of the sanctuary. Zack staggers back to his feet with a curse, knowing an isolated victory had been only moments away. If he withdraws, he may never receive another opportunity to meet the Herald without its followers. Staying is even more suicidal as the full stone monkey horde floods into the valley. Injured and surrounded before he can land a killing strike, Zack can only curse again. Yellow energy crowns Cindermane where he stands protected by a sea of stone bodies. With no survivable alternative, Zack turns away and runs from the basin toward the mountains. He tears down the slope while the roaring troop rapidly gains behind him. His wounds will make it impossible to cross the range if the pursuit continues for long. His cosmic reserve is almost empty, and Cindermane's cry probably called every monkey in the region. Then Zack spots a dark opening carved into the face of a nearby cliff. He races into the narrow tunnel before the horde can close all the roots around him. Stone monkeys crowd into the darkness behind and smash through the rocky entrance. Holding his bloody axe, Zack admits that what he is about to do may be incredibly foolish, but a desperate gamble is preferable to certain death in the open if he still intends to kill the remaining heralds. A tight crevice will not stop the pursuit, so Zack pulls the axe back to destroy the whole passage. An empowered blow crashes into the tunnel roof and violently breaks its support. Tons of falling rock thunder down between him and the pursuing troop. Dust and shattered stone pack the corridor closed before the monkeys can reach his side. Beyond the new barrier, Zack sits in the cavern and takes a brief moment to restore his wounded body. As he wraps his injuries, he curses that even his present maximum strength was not enough while time keeps running out. Cindermane remains on the other side with an army, making a different way out urgently necessary. Since the invaders mine somewhere beneath these mountains, the tunnel system may connect to their passages. Zack can only find out by exploring, so he makes his battered body stand again. He heads farther into the strange mountain instead of attempting the collapsed entrance. Alone, he follows a cavern illuminated in blue as it winds under the protected peaks. The deeper he travels, the denser the surrounding cosmic energy becomes, mirroring the mountaintops. Perhaps the fourth herald is also concealed somewhere in this underground system. That possibility would explain why every search throughout the rest of the island failed. An invisible presence abruptly sharpens Zack's golden gaze in the shining tunnel. Fast little footsteps tap over stone from somewhere beyond the bend. He smiles grimly, pleased that his dangerous theory appears correct. A small winged imp enters view, proving that a herald of its species may live in these caves. Grinning and carrying a radiant crystal, the creature asks Zack where he thinks he is going. It laughs eerily and races through luminous plants with Zack pursuing deeper underground. The imp waves several glowing pieces with pride while leaping through the blue cavern. More Nexus crystals lie scattered among the shining vegetation along its route. Zack did not realize monsters gathered those resources, but instantly seized the larger opportunity. Retracing the thief's path should bring him straight to the hidden place where the crystals came from. He races after the escaping creature before it can vanish down another tunnel. A long hunting lizard suddenly bursts from cover and snatches the imp instead. The unexpected underground attack leaves Zack staring in complete confusion. Covered in blood, the giant reptile rises after ripping into the unlucky winged demon. It finishes swallowing the imp while the stolen crystals scatter over the cavern floor. With that meal gone, the predator charges Zack with its mouth open for another. One ferocious swing of his axe cuts through the lunging reptile in a spray of red. Zack releases a tired breath over the two bodies after the brief, chaotic interruption. He carefully picks up a fallen Nexus crystal among the luminous cave plants. Then he decides to follow the dead imp's trail back toward the origin of its loot. Axe ready, he resumes moving along the blue tunnels. The creature's route proves far simpler to follow than he expected. Its terrible odor marks the way, while another sensation steadily grows more intense. A clear metallic noise eventually reaches him through the twisting passages. The remote clang repeats and confirms that someone is working farther ahead. Heavy pickaxes strike without pause where Clan Azurzak is mining the crystal-filled mountain. Hidden nearby, Zack watches the work and silently accuses the demons of stealing his Nexus crystals. Miners speaking their untranslated language approach dangerously close to where he waits. Their voices continue coming nearer, and Zack raises his weapon in preparation. The exposed, constricted passage offers his injured body no place to conceal itself. He stays where he is as heavy steps slowly come around the corner. Three young demons in light gear appear, each carrying a mining pick through the glowing tunnel. They complain about a dreaded woman who treats everyone in the mine like slaves. One worker assures the others that they are distant enough to criticize her safely. Another says that even his heavy collection brought accusations of secretly stealing crystals. Their smiling companion mentions a valuable new vein found by Loker that they plan to skim. Then he notices the other two looking behind him in terror and asks what they see. He assumes their overseer frightened them, never realizing Zack is already at his back. A savage surprise cut from the human immediately brings the talkative laborer down. His companions shake until one manages to scream that they need to run. Both surviving miners flee through the passage with Zack racing after them. His blood-covered face and bright eyes show that neither witness will be allowed to escape. Power explodes through one foot, fractures the floor, and instantly closes the gap. Zack catches the nearest fleeing demon with a crushing attack at close range. A broad purple arc cuts down the second while the remaining miner runs onward. The last demon whispers that he cannot die like this when safety is almost within reach. He calls Quago's name and begins a warning, but Zack's thrown axe strikes first. The heavy weapon buries itself through the demon's shoulder and leaves him stumbling. Zack rounds the turn behind him and rapidly eliminates the last of the distance. The dying miner stretches forward, struggling to force out the word native. One pitiless passing strike kills him and cuts the incomplete alarm short forever. Zack recovers the bloody axe and admits that he nearly failed to stop the warning. Still, all three miners seem to have died before contacting anyone deeper in the complex. Then an overwhelming smell and rolling green mist announce a threat close by. The corridor opens over a huge chamber crowded with winged imps. Green and violet powers spiral among the underground horde that now faces him. Two armed leaders immediately recognize Zack as one of the dangerous elite natives. The surrounding imps turn and begin forming purple fire in their hands. Eye of Discernment names their scythe-bearing commander Quago a level 44 demon. Zack asks whether this is the fourth herald and declares the discovery perfect. Quago responds with a colossal wall of violent black-purple energy. The hunter dives under the approaching wave before it can engulf him. As soon as it passes, he charges through the fading force with his axe pulled back. A large armored guard stops the swing with a sword and shield. Zack locks against the defense while Quago circles quickly behind him with the scythe. The trapped fighter keeps his attention on the incoming flank with his golden eyes. Zack seizes the red-haired guard and drags him straight into the line of Quago's attack. The angry commander orders the armored Zir to destroy the native without delay. He does not care if the weapon must pass through their companion to reach Zack. Quago also releases a broad tide of violet fire that threatens friend and enemy alike. The human escapes the roaring blast and mockingly apologizes to the demon he used as cover. He leaps over the next attack and lands close to the commander with the scythe. A streak of purple-black power tears through the space just behind him. Zack has realized that common imps are physically sluggish and fragile despite their dangerous ranged magic. If their herald shares that weakness, fighting at close quarters offers his greatest chance. Quago falls back into the laughing swarm and sends more crawling violet flame after him. Reaching the commander becomes harder with every burning path across the chamber. Orange power revolves around Zack as he bursts through one narrow opening. His fiery axe arc cuts several airborne imps down together. A new eruption fills the root with violet flame and forces him to evade again. Quago's self-destructive fire seems determined to burn absolutely everything, even its own wielder. A huge iron cauldron nearby boils behind the fighting and gives off green vapor. A single breath of the fumes makes Zack's injured head begin to spin. The furious herald fires another massive purple wave across the cavern. Disoriented, Zack runs at full speed around the edge of the destructive surge. The roaring energy passes him and detonates against everything that remains in its path. Violet fire consumes every possible retreat, and Zack understands that he has no exit. Ahead of him, Quago draws the chamber's flames together into an enormous spinning vortex. The herald smiles behind the boiling wall, certain his cornered opponent cannot come closer. He releases the compressed inferno in a screaming flood of black-purple destruction. Surprise replaces his confidence when a shape within the attack keeps walking toward him. Zack has activated the circular markings on his armor and chosen to pass directly through the fire. He remembers the enchanted breastplate defending Kivorin during their lethal battle. Its runes absorbed one incoming strike and diverted its force away from the wearer. The same principle should also be capable of turning aside the supernatural inferno. Golden symbols blaze over the armor while Zack forces each step farther into the flames. A violent collision opens a path as the runes tear through the attack. Burned and bleeding, Zack nevertheless comes out alive on the far side. He immediately breaks into harsh coughing as the cauldron's smoke continues clouding his thoughts. Quago takes advantage of the weakness and runs through the green mist toward another passage. Zack realizes the imp herald will be gone unless he stops him immediately. Refusing to let that happen, he grips his axe while golden power builds across the blade. With a furious shout, he charges through the remaining violet fire. Every last trace of cosmic energy enters one final decisive blow. Zack demands to know where Quago imagines he can escape. Then the brilliant axe descends in a gigantic arc aimed directly at the fleeing demon. The all-or-nothing golden strike reaches Quago from behind and cuts straight through him. His body splashes over the cavern as the system instantly awards Zack a new level. Off with their heads advances to 3 of 5, although poison continues burning through Zack's lungs. Imps still laugh nearby in the haze, so the drained victor searches for a route out. The green fumes make each movement more difficult, and he grips his abdomen in pain. Zack lifts the enormous cauldron, afraid its smoke might otherwise spread through the whole mountain. Quago's destroyed remains hiss among the mingling green and purple energy. A violent magical current sweeps the leftover violet flames around the chamber. Stumbling away, the confused warrior asks what is going wrong inside his body. A rush of nausea nearly folds his legs beneath him in the toxic cloud. His sight turns red as he grips his head against the rapidly worsening sickness. With no ability to resist, Zack falls face first onto the stone. The recently leveled survivor lies still in the mist except for a faint groan of pain. Consciousness eventually returns beneath the fumes with his skull pounding violently. He tries to push himself up, but another crushing wave of illness stops him. The unknown mixture ravages his system and makes him vomit across the cavern floor. Zack wipes his mouth and wonders what Quigo had been brewing to make even the vapor so dangerous. Despite having no idea what the contents are, he immediately claims the mysterious cauldron as loot. Fearing that reinforcements may have arrived during his blackout, he staggers toward the exit. One more imp appears from the smoke and is met with an instant chop of the axe. Farther down the passage, Zack finds the corpse of a miner exactly where he left it. Relieved that no patrol came through, he takes the demon's water flask. Zack drinks deeply beside the body and mutters a brief thanks for the stolen water. He knows the attack-diverting fractal in Keyvorn's armor unquestionably preserved his life. Unfortunately, the defense has been completely spent and can recharge only slowly once each day. Since more danger could arrive at any time, Zack retrieves a luminous Nexus crystal from his storage bag. It may not restore the armor, but renewed cosmic energy will at least help him survive another attack. As the crystal's force enters him, his stomach settles and the impulse to vomit disappears. Once stable enough to continue, the recovering fighter calls up his current profile. He is now level 34 with significantly higher attributes, 3 free points, and 545,716 Nexus coins. When he tries adding more points to strength, an error prevents the investment. Zack suspects a cap, although 175 obviously cannot be the highest physical power in the multiverse. The Axeman from his Dao vision wielded strength on an entirely different scale. Perhaps the restriction rises with his level instead of staying at a fixed value. It might also be connected to the F grade of his race and class, neither of which he knows how to advance. The possibility that future attribute points could be wasted leaves him increasingly frustrated. Luck is also impossible to raise manually and has only improved through achievements. Exhausted by rules no one explained, Zack sits by the corpse and curses the system again. Elsewhere underground, workers carry crates of crystals while armed overseers monitor them. One frightened laborer confesses that he missed the daily quota despite warnings that she can sense fear. His companion promises that nothing will happen just as the feared silver-haired warden appears. Guards and miners throughout the area bow immediately under her frigid inspection. The deficient worker visibly shakes while clutching his inadequate collection and waiting for judgment. Another miner first presents his crystals for the day and respectfully calls the woman warden. She examines the radiant bag in silence with narrowed eyes and ominous claws. The bright blue stones spill into her palm so she can evaluate the amount. One short word approves the delivery before she calls the next terrified laborer forward. Barely able to address her, the miner who failed his quota steps up with his bag. The warden refuses to hear explanations, saying that every delay allows other incursions to take their mine. She towers over him and asks whether he truly intends to betray Clan Azurzak. One hand lifts him by the neck while she asks if he understands how traitors are treated. Choking, the worker collapses and pleads for a last chance, promising never to fail again. She orders him killed as an example to anyone else considering betrayal. An armored soldier raises a sword over the defenseless miner's neck. Before striking, the executioner turns after detecting movement somewhere inside the mine. Zack watches unseen from an overhead ledge and prepares to interfere. The warden suddenly announces that the mine is being attacked and turns toward the danger. Huge spotted salamanders flood out of the darkness with their jaws snapping. Panicked workers rise and scatter while supervisors shout for them to keep moving. Armored guards meet the creatures inside the tunnel with broad sweeps of their swords. From his hiding place, Zack recognizes that the conveniently timed disorder offers a perfect opening. Killing the warden would disrupt crystal production and directly weaken the invaders. The swollen pouch on her belt also appears to contain a fortune in Nexus crystals. Zack decides that the outmatched salamanders deserve some direct support against the demons. One guard raises his sword above a charging beast and starts a downward strike. A hidden interruption spoils the confident attack and makes the soldier recoil in pain. Zack emerges from concealment and declares that the moment has come to become rich. Orange force surges around him as he jumps from the ledge with his axe ready. His explosive landing among the surprised defenders announces the new attacker at once. The furious warden spins and demands the identity of whoever invaded her mine. Calling Zack an intruder, she gathers green power and tells everyone to forget the salamanders. An armored fighter follows the order and charges with his sword overhead. Zack pivots into a lightning-fast axe attack edged in red. The superior blow tears through the defense and removes the guard's sword arm. The severed limb falls aside while the soldier screams and grips the bloody stump. Disgusted by her guard's failure, the warden announces that she will deal with Zack herself. She lifts both hands and sends out a storm of huge green blades shaped like leaves. He answers the barrage with a sweep of his axe surrounded by golden energy. Their forces collide in a brilliant shockwave and send fragments across the cavern. Zack's continuing arc breaks through the final projectiles and carries him closer. The warden sees his advance and extends both hands while concentrating spiraling green power. A shining vertical shield catches his golden axe force without shattering. Zack immediately recognizes the same kind of redirection used by Kivorin's enchanted armor. His reflected strike crashes back into him and throws him violently aside. The defense clearly sends every attack straight back toward the person who launched it. Living green vines wrap Zack's ankle and hold him in place while soldiers advance. He cannot block without exposing himself to the reflection, allowing a guard to stab into his side. The sword pierces his restrained torso from behind as its wielder pushes nearer. The pain hardens Zack's face while he builds power against the constricting vegetation. Glowing green shards continue falling around his trapped body through the dark chamber. A fierce axe sweep destroys the closest pressure and drives the nearby soldier away. More vines instantly layer themselves around Zack's legs, torso, and arms. Almost his whole body disappears beneath the coils with the axe pinned in one hand. The warden calls him a thieving vermin and assumes he is part of the elite group attacking their forces. She smiles at the thought of Agra's interrogating the new prisoner about the missing crystals. Beneath the suffocating plants, orange lightning begins pulsing over Zack. The warden mocks the useless struggle, convinced the bound human cannot even reach her. Then concentrated golden power rings from the axe and slices through the surrounding vines. A ranged cut streaks through the cave and catches the shocked warden before she can prepare. Orange force erupts around Zack as he tears free from the remaining coils. Crackling orange power drives Zack forward with his axe leveled at the warden. He breaks apart her final wall of vines and sends terrified guards scattering from his route. The warden cannot believe a human possesses power comparable to their own general. Zack's monstrous momentum carries him through another woven obstacle and across the remaining distance. Sweat appears on the silver-haired overseer as she understands her defenses cannot hold him back. She resolves that such a dangerous enemy must die regardless of the personal cost. Dedicating herself to Clan Azrazak, she detonates a violent mixture of gold and crimson power. Zack recognizes another suicide blast and bitterly says that this cannot be happening again. The warden's self-destruction covers the collection chamber in a gigantic sphere of flame. Zack endures the explosion, but several workers see his identity and immediately escape. His disguise is now useless, and their warnings will soon fill the passages with hostile demons. The injured warrior accepts the problem, since stealth has never been his natural method anyway. He will focus on the last herald before the approaching reinforcements can gather. First, his wrapped hands eagerly open the dead warden's bulging collection sack. A glittering mass of Nexus crystals fills it, prompting Zack to announce that he is finally rich. He then notices that her elaborate red dress somehow survived the blast that erased its wearer. The durable enchanted clothing contains the same attack-reflecting protection as his breastplate. Zack pauses, wondering whether such useful defense justifies wearing something so conspicuous. Practicality defeats embarrassment, and he pulls the dress over his damaged gear. If the garment can decide whether he lives or dies, he is absolutely going to wear it. Zack needs to leave before the tunnels fill with soldiers, so he plans to return to the collapsed entrance. Before going, he checks a system window showing a new step in his class development. Lomewalker requires him to cover 1,000 kilometers without losing contact with the ground. It offers a movement ability that ordinary travel should make fairly easy to earn. His optimism ends when unforeseen blue light suddenly illuminates his face. With no warning, the system activates a unique dynamic mission. Ascension orders him to overcome all rivals and take possession of the mysterious fruit of Ascension. Another vision shows the colossal tree, now bearing a newly revealed luminous fruit. Zack knows nothing about the reward, but instantly decides that it will belong to him. Under the radiant tree, Cindermane and his stone monkeys gather in their hidden mountain valley. Clan Ezek receives the same message, and its troops marvel at another blessing from heaven. Agras reacts with disbelief when the vision exposes exactly what has been concealed in the mountains. He immediately curses Cindermane for hiding a prize guaranteed to draw competition from everywhere. The herald must have repeatedly sent monkey troops to drive scouting parties away from the range. Cindermane evidently found the Tree of Ascension long ago and waited patiently for its treasure to mature. Somehow he also overcame the clan's mental restraint that should have compelled him to report the discovery. Agras grips his head and furiously repeats curses at the rebellious ape's calculated lie. Dark power gathers around him as he promises Cindermane a painful lesson for imagining himself free. He orders every regiment assembled at once for a full advance on the mountain. At that moment, a horned relative enters and asks whether Agras witnessed the ruthless heaven's announcement. Agras calls him Rydal, confirms that mobilization has begun, and demands to be addressed as general rather than cousin. Rydal points out the irony, since Agras was the one who advocated sending hordes of beasts through the portal. He openly wonders how the clan elders will view the disastrous political outcome. Agras rejects the concern, asserts personal command, and orders Rydal to remember his rank. His smiling cousin apologetically informs him that someone else will be handling the crisis. Moving with sudden supernatural speed, Rydal firmly declares that the responsibility is his. When Agras calls it rebellion, Rydal reminds him that the elders appointed him only through the initial stabilization. He reveals that Agras's grandfather has already been informed and approved an immediate transfer of authority. The inexperienced general was always supposed to have supervision during events of great importance. Under an agreement between their ancestors, written commands now hand full military leadership to Rydal. Agras angrily snatches the document while the new commander calmly tells him to examine it. The seal and proclamation are genuine, as the deposed general discovers while reading. He is shaken that his own grandfather quietly sanctioned such a humiliating removal. Rydell says the position may be returned later, but recommends that Agras remain in the castle for his own security. Loyal guards will stay with him while Rydell departs to obtain the fruit. After offering an infuriating farewell, the new commander confidently leaves the chamber. Agras remains alone, watching the usurper's shape vanish through the lit doorway. Meanwhile, Zack refuses to run blindly toward the vision and insists on planning first. Ascension shows that fewer than 12 hours remain before the fruit becomes ripe. Its command to prove supremacy has also exposed the exact location of the prize to every rival. To Zack, the system revealed the site because it actively wants a massacre. The demons and monkeys supposedly serve the same faction, but neither side will willingly give up the fruit. He wonders whether stepping into the inevitable infighting can possibly justify the risk. Competing with several hostile armies for a single object sounds indistinguishable from suicide, yet the fruit triggered a powerful dynamic quest, leaving him with little real choice. Zack vows to take it rather than allow an enemy of Earth to become even stronger. He grips the axe and sends another focused chop into the rubble, sealing the way. 12 hours remain, so there is no advantage in arriving beside the tree too soon. Waiting openly for the fruit would only make him an easy target. Enemy leaders are also approaching behind the protection of full disciplined armies. Zack's best chance is to remain unnoticed, arrive late, kill Cindermane, and take the reward. He might even eliminate the incursion general, although failure will require another desperate retreat. Ascension permits no compromise, and a win could solve his ongoing incursion objective at the same time. Losing will damage his prospects regardless of which enemy eventually secures the fruit. The determined hunter smiles without humor and decides that defeat is simply unaffordable. He blows through the cave-in and sends broken stone exploding around his crouched form. The newly cleared opening reveals a sight that steals his breath. Across the basin, soldiers of Clan Ezek are already locked in battle with the stone monkeys. Apes roar through magical bombardment while the demons strain to preserve their lines. Above the rain-soaked war stands the Tree of Ascension, its pale canopy dominating the valley. From cover, Zack sees a monkey throw a giant rock through a cluster of demon troops. At present, he estimates that the clan loses one soldier for every 3 apes, though the clash has only begun. Demonic magic drains limited cosmic reserves, whereas the defenders can keep throwing stones indefinitely. A huge monkey crashes into the formation and crushes another armored combatant. The worsening disorder is exactly the concealment Zack needs for his plan. Then he notices the likely general fighting in a prominent position amid the storm. Rydell's long violet sword effortlessly cuts through multiple stone monkeys rushing him. Zack silently thanks the dead warden for supplying a disguise convincing enough to fool her own faction. He enters the fighting and hopes everyone is too occupied to notice that he lacks horns. On the way down, he smashes through an ape and lands on the demon's side of the conflict. Zack walks among the corpses and battling soldiers as casually as if he belongs there. A red-haired officer stops him and sharply demands an answer in the demon language. Unable to understand, the disguised human manages only a nervous and meaningless pause. Suspicion tightens her green eyes while nearby fighters begin looking at the stranger. Zack attempts to keep walking normally and silently reminds himself to maintain the role. The officer recognizes that he is human and instantly reveals the infiltration to everyone around them. She fires a fast series of arrows, which Zack knocks away with the shaft of his axe. He sarcastically remarks that she really should have allowed him to continue on his way. Golden lightning covers the raised weapon as Zack charges through the rain. His axe crashes down against her violet defense to begin the fight violently. The weapons meet in a crushing golden eruption that casts purple fragments across the rain. A nearby archer freezes at the extraordinary strength displayed by the disguised human. A broad circular wave from Zack's axe then tears through several surrounding troops at once. Standing above their ruined formation, he reminds those still alive that he gave them a warning. With 19 minutes until the fruit ripens, he avoids more battles to conserve power and delay further experience. Zack hopes the Fruit of Ascension might remove his strength limitation before he earns additional points. He reaches a thin stand of trees and stops at how drastically the battlefield has transformed. Magical flashes and heavy tremors spread across the basin under the shining tree. It feels as if the valley's entire supply of cosmic energy is being drawn away. Still, apes and demons continue savaging one another as the earth disintegrates around them. A purple-skinned swordsman nearby sees Zack coming and cries out an unintelligible warning. Recognition shows on his face as he turns fully toward the disguised intruder. A burning chop silences the soldier before he can bring more attention to Zack. Zack dislikes leaving the trees, but the approaching ripening gives him no safe alternative. He selects the western path because most of the intense combat is taking place in the east. The thinner lines on that side may let him approach the tree without being noticed. Staying low, Zack accelerates through the downpour between broken terrain and scattered combatants. The ascension timer reaches 10 minutes as the critical moment rapidly nears. A thrown spear barely passes him during another violent collision between monkeys and demons. The breathless infiltrator looks back in confusion at the unanticipated strike. Near the tree, Zack encounters a gigantic transparent barrier inscribed with obvious system fractals. With 6 minutes left, he assumes the field will collapse at the exact moment the fruit matures. Rydell and Cindermane confront each other within the violet boundary among scattered combatants. The armored commander walks forward without fear while the enormous herald roars its challenge. Their fight begins in an eruption of golden force and violet trails above the muddy earth. Rydell smiles with anticipation while testing the rebellious ape's power at close quarters. Repeated impacts flash overlapping waves of purple and gold through the rainfall. Cindermane bellows after another exchange, but his opponent remains visibly amused in a deeply disturbing way. A crushing counter from the white-haired commander sends the herald flying aside. The injured monkey huffs under the heavy rain and immediately returns to his feet. Rydell casually brings his sword back into position as the timer falls to 2 minutes. Zack could scarcely wound Cindermane, yet the supposed general is taking him apart with ease. The balance of the fight must change, and Zack prepares to supply that change himself. With 1 minute and 45 seconds left, Cindermane suddenly knocks Rydell away. Both rivals stop and look above as Zack gathers power over their heads. The concealed human descends inside a tremendous column of compressed violet force. Zack smiles beneath his rain-soaked hood as he recognizes a valuable new opening. A massive purple surge lashes over both duelists and smothers the ground around them. It explodes into a dazzling sphere powerful enough to consume the immediate battlefield. Only falling rock, white spray, and indistinct shapes remain visible inside the blast. As the detonation fades, Zack searches the storm for the two enemies he intentionally separated. A blue-violet sword suddenly appears from beyond his vision and cuts toward his skull. He barely catches Rydell's impossibly rapid attack on the strengthened handle of his axe. The commander sees Kevorn's stolen armor and correctly names Zack as the person who killed his cousin. Rydell promises to repay the favor and spins directly into another merciless high-speed strike. It moves too quickly for the human to visually track and leaves him reacting on desperation alone. The restored fractal in Zack's armor catches the attack and throws its force back out. Blue and purple energy erupts as the startled commander is launched over the broken earth. Zack regrets recklessly entering range at the exact moment his one defensive charge is consumed. Rydell rises with a smile and declares that the spent advantage finally makes their fight fair. The pair face each other on the fractured field while Cindermane recovers behind them. Eye of Discernment identifies the superior fighter as Rydell Zack, despite a level of only 55. Rydell assumes Zack commands the troublesome natives and welcomes him for finally showing himself. He says the dynamic mission ensured the native leader would reveal himself by trying to take the reward. The commander invites this supposed leader to prove he deserves to participate in their contest. Zack considers him the strongest enemy yet, even with his own greater raw strength. That advantage is irrelevant when Rydell's incomparable speed prevents every blow from landing. Zack turns to the recovering herald and silently decides that temporary cooperation is necessary. He asks Cindermane to suspend their conflict and join him against the more dangerous opponent. The wounded ape answers with Aurora's golden fire covers his entire body. Cindermane accepts the proposed alliance by smashing the ground without regard for anyone, making Zack instantly doubt the idea. Human and commander attack at the same time, sending their glowing weapons together through the rain. Colliding violet and golden energy shoots upward into a colossal pillar of destruction. The blast hurls Rydell and Cindermane into the air while their temporary third rival observes. Rydell closes both hands around his sword and concentrates crackling blue-purple power. He releases a huge descending blade wave toward both enemies across the chaotic field. Zack races beyond its route while searching desperately for a way to decide the fight. 34 seconds remain when another gigantic section of stone breaks from the ruined ground. The event reveals the position Rydell and Cindermane will need to occupy to seize the fruit. At 23 seconds, both contenders hurry nearer to the barrier. The acting commander and last herald now stand together, fully exposed to one conclusive blow. Their golden and blue-violet forces clash once more beside the nearly mature tree. The exchange supplies precisely the opportunity Zack needs to prepare his strongest remaining attack. With 15 seconds on the timer, orange lightning collects around his axe and hands. Caution has become impossible as Chop completely fills the weapon with power. Zack vows to kill both claimants in one strike before either can touch the prize. A vast violet wave tears from the axe and crosses the rain-drenched basin. Only 10 seconds remain as it speeds toward the two clustered targets. Rydell and Cindermane finally turn in alarm after noticing the approaching attack. The huge slash detonates around them with 7 seconds left. Its violet flash overwhelms both rivals and shocks even Zack at close range. The explosion continues expanding through rain and destroyed earth as the timer reaches 5 seconds. Zack dashes past falling boulders while 4 seconds become 3. At 2 seconds, he leaps among the airborne slabs toward the now exposed fruit. The interface displays one as his axe cuts through the last barrier in his way. Glowing red veins pulse through the tree and the protective field breaks into innumerable violet panes. The fruit of ascension is ripe, its pink-white glow hanging just within Zack's reach. Before anyone can recover, he cuts cleanly through the curled black stem. A shower of scarlet blossoms follows the huge fruit into his waiting hand. Zack holds the prize to his chest and prepares for the much more difficult task of getting away. He immediately understands that taking the treasure was easy compared with surviving afterward. Rydell and Cindermane emerge alive from the ruins and stare at the rival who succeeded. Under the pounding rain, Zack hurriedly pushes the fruit into his dimensional bag. Every living being in the valley has now turned its attention directly toward him. He forgets about killing the two rivals and gives immediate escape absolute priority. Possession of the fruit has made him the single target of the entire battlefield. Zack runs from the tree, but an enormous sword beam drives toward him. He orders the packed soldiers out of his way and cuts his axe through their failing ranks. Demons surround him, their blades cracking against his protection as he forces a path. Another blue-violet blow descends while Zack accepts that the theft will require much more killing. Anyone choosing to throw away their life by delaying him will be permitted to do exactly that. Zack turns through a broad circular axe attack and flings surrounding troops in all directions. Dark bodies fall around his route, though the constant slaughter leaves him gasping. Controlled steps behind him reveal that the white-haired commander has already caught up. Rydell stops Zack's rising axe with his blue sword and refuses to allow the thief to leave. A pale arc cuts through the downpour as the commander's sweeping attack pushes him back. Zack twists around the next strike and throws himself away in search of open space. Cindermane intercepts him with a devastating blow that smashes him against a rising boulder. Blood runs heavily from his axe while the injured human crouches and struggles for breath. Escape is no longer possible now that both enemies have abandoned their own conflict to stop him. Zack rises before the final herald and level 55 commander and bitterly calls their attention flattering. Murderous resolve hardens all three faces as they rush together. Blue-white, violet, and golden energies compress into their three-way collision. The resulting shockwave floods the valley and makes surrounding troops protect themselves. One indistinct body rockets out of the impact zone over rubble and fallen fighters. Nearby soldiers shout for their general and begin moving toward the impossible clash. A companion holds them back, warning that joining would only obstruct Rydell. Ordinary fighters are useless while three monsters battle at speeds beyond their vision. Zack repeatedly blocks the commander's sword, but every attempt to disengage is immediately denied. Merely surviving each accelerating exchange consumes all the speed and concentration he possesses. Violet electricity erupts from their locked weapons, drawing a curse from Zack at Rydell's electrified attacks. Even a successful block cannot stop the current shocking his body, and the commander keeps him trapped. Worse, every strike contains a Dao seed carrying the abstract sharpness of a cut. The combined edge opens luminous violet wounds through his armor and flesh. Electricity makes his muscles seize until the axe starts falling from his hands. Rydell uses the opening to drive the bright sword entirely through Zack's body in a red flash. Gravely wounded, the thief crashes onto one knee as blood spreads beneath him. The commander calls him pathetic and ridicules the failed theft that brought him here. He reaches for the dimensional bag and says the stolen fruit will now be returned. Cindermane suddenly hits him from behind with a golden blow blazing at full strength. The Scorched Herald steadies himself nearby with yellow lightning burning around one hand. Rydell angrily condemns the ape and blames Agras for the disgraceful situation. Cindermane gives only a dismissive snort in response to the white-haired demon's outrage. Rydell rages about his cousin's dependence on family influence and promises to restore order himself. The red-furred ape gathers every remaining piece of power inside a crushing scarlet aura. Darkened by injury, Zack shoots past Rydell at the Herald while Cindermane is distracted and spent. He brutally drives the monkey's head into the earth, killing Cindermane and gaining 2 levels. Off with their heads advances to 4 of 5 required enemies within the allotted 3 months. Strengthened by the levels, Zack faces Rydell and says that only the general remains. Rydell scoffs, insisting that none of the slain heralds were close to his actual power. Wrapped in spiraling violet force, Rydell launches forward and meets Zack's raised axe with lethal momentum. Their weapons collide and blast a round crater through the ground beneath the battlefield. For the first time, Zack directly combines his formation-cutting chop with the Tao of Heaviness. Until now, he alternated the two abilities and never risked channeling them through the axe together. Their separate currents finally join like merging rivers and erupt as a unified power. Golden lightning fills the weapon beneath a gigantic violet image of its edge. Zack roars and drives the fused technique down with every fragment of strength he has left. Rydell rejects the possibility of such power coming from a world integrated fewer than 3 months ago. The enormous blow crashes onto him and buries the shocked commander in a vertical explosion. He emerges from the crater bleeding and breathless, with visible cracks across his shining sword. Screaming at the worm before him, Rydell summons hundreds of violet blades into the stormy air. The sharpened energy immediately descends around Zack in an unavoidable shrieking rain. Countless overlapping sword impacts hammer the ground until the entire battlefield disappears beneath them. Zack challenges the barrage and makes his injured body advance straight through its center. Their powers meet again in a blinding burst of white and purple pressure. Blood covers Zack where spectral blades remain planted throughout the ruined earth. Even so, he keeps the axe raised and walks through the glowing forest of swords toward Rydell. Both men stare through blood and rain as Zack orders his failing body to keep moving. Rydell answers with a violet crescent sweeping directly toward the stubborn survivor. Zack's advance abruptly stops when the luminous edge reaches his blood-covered face. The attack fails because Rydell suddenly gasps, his expression twisting with disbelief and pain. A black-violet blade has burst through his torso, held by Agras, who calmly greets his cousin from behind. The betrayed commander screams Agras' name while shadow energy and blood erupt from the wound. Beneath a hood darkened by the storm, the horned general responds with a pleased smile. He stands coldly over the fallen Rydell, his dripping dark weapon still extended. Zack kneels in stunned silence as both armies try to comprehend the betrayal. The clan troops recover first, anger spreading through the ranks as their weapons crackle with power. One armored soldier openly declares Agra's a traitor for assassinating the acting commander. The furious formation charges and demands his execution for turning against the clan. Zack watches the smiling murderer and realizes that Rydell has genuinely fallen in front of him. Soldiers surge toward their slain general while Agras disregards the weapons closing in. He calmly removes a tiny scarlet pill from a concealed pocket near his belt. Without hesitation, Agras swallows it as the fight contracts around his isolated position. Zack wonders whether the betrayal was meant to save him or merely advance some separate scheme. He also questions why no system notice confirmed Rydell's death as the end of his quest. The apparent rescuer turns away from the body and takes one unstable step alone. Then he vomits black blood as the unknown pill violently attacks his system. The true incursion general collapses and off with their heads moves to 5 out of 5. Every soldier falls silent while Agras lies unmoving beside the cousin he murdered. In front of the stunned armies, the system declares Zack's savage 3-month mission complete. Zack looks at Agras' body in disbelief and wonders if the general intentionally committed suicide. For a moment, he suspects Agras was an assassin from a competing faction, even though he sabotaged his own invasion. Hundreds of demons still surround him, leaving no time to investigate the possibility. The soldiers seem equally lost, but could recover and attack within moments. Without warning, the supposed corpse jerks and spasms violently against the broken stone. Almost completely exhausted, Zack turns and raises his bloody axe toward the movement. Agras sits up coughing, complains about the ordeal and reveals that his death did not last. Zack immediately moves to make it permanent rather than risk another concealed plan. The revived demon lifts one hand and urgently asks his would-be executioner to pause. Smiling through blood and sickness, Agras claims that they are actually allies. After everything he witnessed, Zack demands one reason not to remove the demon's head at once. Agras says both armies will kill them and suggests deploying the cauldron taken from Quago. Despite having earned no confidence at all, he asks Zack to empty its contents into the valley. There will be time for explanations later, but neither of them will survive unless they act now. Trapped by the logic, Zack curses and agrees that it is their sole remaining option. He calls the plan a Hail Mary while the armies close the circle around them. Green vapor escapes the rim as he pulls the heavy cauldron from the storage pouch. Zack throws the whole vessel over the battlefield at the thickest concentration of enemies. Its iron shell breaks open among purple flames and releases an expanding cloud of green. Poison-colored smoke and debris explode across the basin in a violent cyclone. Quago's poison envelops the troops, sending choking and screaming demons through the emerald fog. Zack asks what comes next, only for Agras to ready an escape of his own. The smiling demon wishes him good fortune and places a small blue item between his teeth. A shadowy blink instantly takes him away and leaves a dark afterimage in his place. From the crater, his abandoned partner watches the escape and furiously curses the betrayal. Zack enters the swelling cloud before the mountain wind can spread poison over the whole basin. Holding his breath, he sprints through the choking confusion among collapsing enemies. However fast he moves, the green vapor continues following across the destroyed valley. He realizes the toxin is entering his bloodstream directly through his exposed wounds. Luminous green corruption flows among his red blood cells even though he refuses to inhale. Zack aims for higher ground, expecting the heavy fog to remain below the mountain summits. Dark veins spread across his injuries while he forces his failing legs onward. The worsening sickness breaks his rhythm and makes him stumble through the contaminated wilderness. Every desperate breath collects more green poison around his throat and mouth. Eventually, the exceptional toxin overwhelms even Zack's enhanced constitution and knocks him down. A radiant lake lies ahead, possibly offering protection under its clear, energy-saturated water. Desperate, Zack plunges below the surface and swims for the deepest part. The cosmic power within it suggests an underwater route may lead directly into the crystal mine. Golden force suddenly races across his submerged body and makes the water steam around him. Unbearable heat fills him and sends his body thrashing violently beneath the surface. After fighting for 2 months, Zack fears the charged water will kill him even sooner than the poison. With no option left, he pulls the fruit of ascension out of his dimensional storage. He bites deeply into its luminous flesh and demands that his stolen prize keep him alive. Even through the agony, its unexpectedly wonderful flavor makes him pause. Cool energy begins driving back the toxin and gives him a delicate hope of survival. Then the heat returns within his submerged body and signals another dangerous process. Zack realizes the fruit itself is burning him, which makes the supposed cure feel disastrously wrong. Repeated waves of heat roll through him until his endurance begins to collapse. The alternating fire and cold hurt worse than Rydell's blade and lightning ever did. Both arms become numb and consciousness starts slipping away in the glowing water. The numbness reaches his chest as uncontrolled golden energy rages throughout him. Somehow, Zack finds an underwater ledge in a cavern lined with pale Nexus crystal deposits. He breaks through the surface of the blue-lit pool and desperately drags in air. Coughing and sputtering, he pulls himself and his axe onto the rock. Another convulsion sends water from his mouth over the cold cavern floor. His exhausted body collapses beside the weapon while he struggles to form broken words. Barely conscious, Zachary Atwood calls up his status to see what the fruit has done. The panel shows him at level 36 as an E-grade human with greatly improved attributes and 2 unknown titles. His strength is now 189, finally surpassing the previous ceiling of 175. Zach opens the title menu to investigate planetary Aegis and 1 against many. Surviving 500 enemies of his tier grants 1 against many and 10 endurance, while planetary Aegis improves all attributes. 5 flat points and another 5% come from becoming the first person on Earth to defeat an incursion. The battered pioneer smiles at taking first place again before fatigue drags him down. Leaning on the cavern wall, he finally releases a long breath of relief at still being alive. Plenty of demons likely escaped, particularly Agra's, whose assistance has not made him trustworthy. Zack promises to settle matters properly in the future and opens his quest window. Off with their heads is complete, awarding 10 E-grade Nexus crystals, gear, and a performance-based unique structure. Incursion Master remains 0 of 3, with a little over 43 days before the protection timer ends. Forrester's constitution has unexpectedly reached 8 of 30, while Lomewalker is still at 0. Zack is confused because he has traveled dozens of kilometers since receiving the movement objective. Looking at the bottom of his boot explains why none of those steps qualified as contact with Earth. His footwear kept his skin away from the ground during every kilometer he thought counted. Zack removes it and tests a bare foot toughened by his evolved body. The skin is hard enough to cross shattered glass without receiving a meaningful wound. Satisfied, he takes up the axe and prepares to continue the journey without shoes. First, he collects some of the shining cavern water in a container for emergency use. Zack follows abandoned mining tracks farther underground and is surprised to meet no guards. Carts remain filled with valuable glowing crystals that survived the massacre above. Despite the exposed wealth, the entire mining network appears deserted. At last, Zack exits the mountain into brilliant daylight high above the rocky slopes. From his high position, Zack sees an unfamiliar fortress stretching through the forest below. The red pillar of the incursion is gone, but his remaining responsibilities still require a closer look. The improved stronghold has become a crowded stone city of towers, tents, and heavy walls. Clan Ezak clearly spent the previous weeks working relentlessly to secure its position, yet the walls that were crowded with defenders on his first approach now stand abandoned. Even the imposing towers have no guards despite the scale of the fortifications. Several dark plumes of smoke rise inside, however, proving the settlement is not entirely empty. The barefoot warrior jumps from the ridge and rapidly makes his way toward the nearest wall. He lands without a sound and wonders whether the army fled after the loss of its commander. A few distant people moving along the streets make him reject that explanation. They resemble frightened civilians rather than soldiers and wander aimlessly among the empty structures. Their expressions suggest the failed incursion has stranded them without purpose or leadership. Zack enters the deserted city and silently closes on one blue-haired resident standing alone. Before she can warn anyone, he reaches from behind and covers the small demon's mouth. Her dark eyes open wide with fear as the unseen captor tightens his hold. Zack swiftly drags her into a tight alley beyond the view of possible witnesses. He tells her that one scream will mean death and requires a clear sign that she understands. The shaking captive nods beneath his palm and promises cooperation without speaking. Zack says he will release her unharmed and leave if she answers him honestly. He asks why anyone stayed after the incursion ended and learns that some survivors have no way back. The woman explains that defeat disgraced the clan, making home so dangerous that some preferred permanent exile. Zack is stunned to realize an unknown population of demon refugees now lives on his island. She claims to be only a clerk but names Agras as the real general who departed recently. Zack accuses her of deception because he personally saw that commander fall dead. The terrified clerk insists Agra's lives and left the palace only a short while ago. He describes the silver-armored, white-haired swordsman with lightning whom he believed to be general. She identifies the man as Rydal, second-in-command of the clan rather than the incursion's leader. Her answer confirms Zack's suspicion that Agras was the mysterious demon who assisted him through the crisis. Still, he does not understand why Agras' temporary death was enough to satisfy the quest. Nor can he explain why the schemer poisoned his troops, murdered an ally, and then headed south. The clerk says Agras questioned many people in the palace before leaving in that direction. Zack instantly remembers that his exposed outpost and companions are located to the south. Before departing, he asks the captive her name as she carefully steps back into the sunlight. The blue-haired clerk introduces herself as Zakarith and says she can simply be called Zack. Their annoyingly similar names make the bald warrior grin as he raises his weapon. With a misleading smile, he welcomes her to Earth and prepares one final safeguard. The handle of his axe knocks her unconscious, so she cannot immediately alert anyone after he leaves. Zack abandons the harmless refugee beside some barrels and approaches the outer wall. One leap carries him over it while another urgent objective continues counting down. Between the missing general and the uncertain refugees, the supposedly ended incursion remains complicated. Zack heads south toward home, unwilling to let Agras remain there without supervision. Before he arrives, a polished black boot quietly enters the concealed campsite. The revived general walks between the trees under a faint mist of purple force. Agras studies the trailer and primitive fire pits, recognizing the hidden base used by his opponents. He pushes scraps aside with his boot and assumes some unclean beast must live there. Examining the bloodstained site, he dismisses its missing inhabitant as a rabid animal. Still, he reluctantly acknowledges that these uncivilized enemies succeeded in destroying his whole incursion. Finding the Nexus node forces him to promote them from entirely mindless animals. Although defeat should prevent him from accessing any node, Agras tests the crystalline interface. Crimson Force erupts at once and violently rejects his unauthorized hand. The failed general is unable to incorporate his own settlement and remains isolated indefinitely. Enough demons are stranded with him, however, to create a different base of influence. A sudden noise in the woods pulls his shining eyes away from the node. Zack crosses the hidden boundary and walks over the leaves toward his occupied home. Agras is shocked, having assumed no ordinary life could endure what happened in the valley. Bald, barefoot, and wearing the face of a combat lunatic, the survivor advances. The impossible sight makes the demon wonder whether this monster already ate the fruit of ascension. His uneasy attention moves between the returning owner and the protected Nexus node. Agras sighs in annoyance as tendrils of black shadow collect around his tense form. Zack finds the illusion array undamaged, but immediately feels that something is seriously wrong. He swallows a recovery potion and prepares for the danger waiting on the other side of the field. Axe ready, Zack bursts through the boundary with purple energy flowing around his armor. The intruder responds by complaining that Earth's natives are unnecessarily aggressive barbarians. Zack discovers the Horned General sitting comfortably at an elaborate table and gesturing toward an open chair. He recognizes Agras even though he watched the demon lie dead in the mountain valley. Agras confirms his name and asks about Camper Zack, while Zack demands why he came and how the base was found. The demon explains that an F-grade illusion formation is simple to detect and that his party discovered the place days earlier. He then mocks the tiny blood-stained metal trailer serving as Zack's primitive home. Agras wonders aloud whether humans have learned how to build a proper structure at all. Still, his people located Zack in the underground tunnels too late to use their familiarity with the terrain. Growing impatient, Zack again asks why the visitor came and why demons still remain on his island. Agras proposes a peaceful meeting, arguing that the completed incursion has removed the cause of their hostility. Zack realizes the guest wrongly believes he belongs to a larger local faction that might be valuable. He nevertheless points out that Earth entered the multiverse less than 2 months ago and asks why the invaders deserve mercy. Agras says failure ended their incursion and gave its survivors 12 hours to return through the portal. Some miss that Chance and others stayed by choice, permanently breaking their clan ties and abandoning home. The ruthless heavens sealed the route, making return almost impossible and continued war between them meaningless. Zack challenges the demon's indifference after so many deaths and asks what the ruthless heavens are. Agras lists the system, Cosmic Warden, and Endless Heavens as other names, then dismisses the deaths of anonymous clan members. Every one of his siblings had already been murdered or killed in battle within the clan before they reached Earth. When Zack asks why they invaded in the first place, the general simply says they wanted Earth's resources. Newly integrated worlds overflow with wealth, and incursions devour them, while his clan happened to draw one homicidal human monster. Remembering the Stargazer's direct threat, Zack asks why the system never punished them for failing. Agras laughs at the cruelty of the situation after realizing their strategy relied on a dishonest Stargazer. He explains that the ruthless heavens merely stopped paying attention and asks whether Zack expected everyone to be executed after the fruit battle. Agras welcomes him to a merciless multiverse where the honest are killed and the clever endure. Zack asks whether the demonic attack was only one of numerous incursions and whether all invaders look like them. The guest doubts it and insists they need each other, since Clan Azure Zack represents only a fraction of the dangers ahead. Agras offers workers and information in return for protection from Earth's uniquely strong defender. The system suppresses foreign power in infant worlds, so the island remains safe only while other factions fail to discover it. He urges Zack to become a lord and protect the refugees within a city recognized by the system. Zack is already pursuing such an objective and learns that lords can buy extremely powerful urban structures. Some defensive installations can erase entire attacking armies, although they cost several million Nexus coins. Agras asks to view Zack's quest message, claiming it will reveal the precise requirements for becoming a lord. Zack supplies his name instead of human and refuses to show a private mission. The demon explains that sharing displays only the heavenly text and gives no one else the right to complete it. He adds that Zack and his imaginary allies surely trade this sort of mission information already. Concerned that his isolation may be obvious, Zack reluctantly agrees to share one quest. He displays Incursion Master, still at 0 of 3 with a little more than 43 days on the clock. Agras immediately identifies it as a monster horde challenge, leaving Zack to demand how he knows. The use of denizens rather than factions points to mindless creatures, and Agras calls it another irritating lord trial. He predicts an assault when the timer ends and new hordes every month afterward, leaving around 6 weeks for preparation. Zack demands that the demon faction contribute the crystals it mined, but learns most of them were sent back through the portal. A long, suspicious silence passes between the negotiators over the vanished mountain riches. Agras carefully suggests that retreating clan members might have failed to locate every concealed crystal deposit. Zack dryly replies that they can certainly rediscover any leftovers that convenient. The demon proposes buying a smelting furnace first, which can refine unprocessed crystals into graded ones. Zack objects to his possessive phrasing, but Agras confidently repeats that the resources belong to both of them. His people's knowledge is supposedly essential, particularly since Zack cannot extract a mountain alone. The defender accepts the idea of cooperation, remembering that Agras killed Rydell and helped poison much of his own force. They decide those facts must remain hidden from the refugees to preserve confidence before practical talks continue. Agras then casually asks whether Zack is aware that poison already exists inside his body. The alarmed warrior shoots to his feet and angrily demands an explanation. His axe destroys the table as he orders the startled demon to start speaking immediately. Agras hastily points to the cosmic water Zack drank and urges him to calm himself. Zack assumes the demon poisoned his pond, forcing Agras to deny it emphatically. Raw cosmic water burns a person's internal pathways and probably appeared when the system placed a nexus vein in the mountain. It refills energy within moments, but repeated drinking harms the body and may eventually kill. Standing amid the wrecked furniture, Zack insists that nothing feels wrong. Agras notes that Zack just used energy and tells him to watch whether it returns naturally without assistance. Zack lowers the axe and unwillingly accepts the warning while cosmic sparks continue drifting nearby. He notices that his normally reliable energy regeneration has slowed to almost nothing despite his non-cultivator body. When asked about treatment, Agras mentions exceedingly rare pills and says most people who drink raw cosmic water die within a day. The damaged pathways must heal, since drawing in more power can make the injury permanent and ultimately starve the body. Zack realizes the approaching hordes may force him to fight without cosmic energy and asks for another solution. Agras recommends staying in areas dense with energy, although he cannot say how effective that will be or how long recovery takes. The survivor quietly considers the bleak diagnosis as he settles into his chair again. Then Agras complains about the irritation caused by progenitors, immediately prompting Zack to ask what that means. He explains that Zack belongs to Earth's first cultivating generation, a group granted immense benefits despite complete inexperience. These reckless newcomers make spectacularly stupid decisions yet somehow emerge more powerful than trained experts. New planets are flooded by the system with rare titles and rewards, and their inhabitants form Dao seeds more easily. The interested advisor asks what exceptional prize Zack received for ending the incursion. Zack hesitates to reveal anything valuable to someone he fundamentally still does not trust. The friendly behavior may only be an attempt to position Agras for a later robbery or murder. Sending him away would invite secret surveillance, however, so keeping the cooperation visible seems safer. Zack walks to the Nexus node and decides that they can discover the reward at the same time. The system grades the victory after 47 days and calculates an 88% contribution with one supporter. 10 E-grade Nexus crystals appear along with a complete collection of E-grade equipment. The trousers and robe contain self-repairing, self-cleaning fractals that distribute blows throughout the wearer's body. As a full set, the equipment can also absorb and cancel 2 attacks each day. Zack takes the elegant clothing from the reward container and finally voices his approval. He changes into asymmetrical robes of green and white, their simple cut exposing one muscular arm. Agras compliments the quality and suggests civilized clothes will improve his partner's savage image. They may even stop the remaining demons from cowering when told to work with their infamous killer. Zack makes no promise about any alliance before a deep rumble suddenly cuts into their conversation. The campsite shakes violently under both men as unexplained thunder sounds below the island. Agras demands to know what happened, while Zack repeatedly swears that he did absolutely nothing. Beyond the woods, the sea erupts as a colossal object begins rising beside the coastline. They run to a cliff and stare at the impossible structure taking shape below. Water cascades from immense dark walls while blue power glows across something materializing from nothing. An enormous fortified shipyard finishes emerging along what had been an empty shore. The system grants Zack an E-grade medium-scale Ilix shipyard as his unique performance building. Former enemies stand together without words, stunned by the vast scale of the unexpected naval reward. Barely containing his excitement, Agras abruptly asks whether the magnificent facility can be upgraded. Zack does not understand, so the demon tells him to open the town menu, inspect the building, and share the details. The owner brings up a blue screen, finds the entry, and confirms what Agras requested. The E-grade medium-scale Ilix shipyard is explicitly labeled as upgradable by the system. Agras questions Zack's absurd luck and declares that a creator's shipyard changes everything. Still unable to understand its importance, Zack wonders whether he somehow created it himself. His frustrated advisor calls him a swine and explains that the Ilix are sentient golems. Agras says the Ilix are among the finest builders in the multiverse and are widely known as creators. Their aerial fortresses and cosmic vessels are desired everywhere, making a fully staffed facility extraordinarily rare. Zack compares the cosmic vessels to spacecraft and learns that they cross enormous distances throughout the multiverse. He eagerly asks if the shipyard will build one, but its E-grade means several improvements are required first. Agras insists the facility must stay secret in the meantime, raising questions about concealment and upgrades. Any planetary faction would try to seize this treasure, while only the creators living inside know how it can advance. Zack says he will question them personally and cuts off Agras when the demon excitedly offers to join him. He stresses that he will enter alone, leaving his would-be partner visibly disappointed. Waves strike the giant platforms and fortified workshops of the otherwise silent docks. The new owner passes beneath a towering entrance trimmed in gold and searches for residents. Zachary Atwood introduces himself to the empty hall and politely asks whether he is disturbing anyone. A giant silver golem welcomes Mr. Atwood as Rom, liaison for Illich's pre-cosmic shipyard 65,238 on Earth. Rom bows and promises to address every question or complaint through efficient and impartial service. Another mechanical inhabitant tells Zach to ignore the stiff old goat, immediately demonstrating their different personalities. Zach stares at a pair of beautifully constructed articulated legs until their owner teasingly asks if he approves. She boasts that her body took 3 centuries and stolen C-grade nebulous copper to make, likely the reason she was demoted to foreman.